afraid. All the panelists here, they are waiting, but I have to start the show with some announcement. So, like you have seen, I've changed the name of the show and the YouTube group and Twitter. Why is that? Because the French Wrecking Crew, I have started this channel uh, prin- principally to cover the Stephen Avery case. But like you have seen with the year, I talk about a lot of different subjects. And I think it was a good time to change mind. So I made the change. And the idea of mysteries of with Mr. Belgic comes from a friend of Sharon, my Sharon Young. And I was thinking that this name was really funny, and Mysteries with Mr. Belgic, it's a good name. So it's like that. There is nothing wrong with the French Wrecking Crew, but the French Wrecking Crew is, let's say, over. And now this is Mystery with Mr. Belgic, which is magic, Mr. Rus, Mr. Rus. I would like to say happy birthday to Tony Daniele. I would like to say that soon we will have a big reunion with the old team of Making a Murderer. So we are we will have some people who will agree and some people who are not agree with the fact that Stephen Harvey is guilty or not, and we will try to debate and stay calm and no fight, nothing like this, because this is something I hate. So now I have and now we'll have the panel with us.
Hello.
Hello, guy.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Are you doing well?
Yeah,
Doing well.
that new introduction certainly woke me up.
Yeah, I like the music.
I would like to make a big shout out to Ned, who had received Mrs. Aphrodite Jones on his channel today for an excellent interview. I recommend you to go to look the interview on BBOR. It was really well done. And like this, Mr. Dehan, you receive celebrities now. It's like this.
I'm going to be trying. I'm going to be trying to do some more of that. And I was really grateful that Aphrodite Jones wanted to come on. I contacted her on Facebook, and I was thinking, is this really her, or is this like a fan account or something, or a fake profile? And I was just saying, hey, would you like to be a guest on Black Box Online Radio? And she said, I would love to. And I was like, all right then. Who am I to
Oh, great.
doubt her after
Wow.
that? And it was really nice that she has done Zodiac things in the past, so we could talk about some of the investigations that she did, particularly looking into the suspect, Jack Torrance, the suspect of Dennis Kaufman, and also really appreciated everything she said about handwriting analysis. And, she was honest enough to admit that she used to believe wholeheartedly that handwriting analysis is extremely reliable. But these so called experts are not very reliable, some of them. I think that it's going to be like any profession. Some people are going to be amazing, and other people are going to be average. Some people probably will not be very good. Maybe they're people like Michael Wachsel who are liars. I don't know. So, anyway, yes, my name is Ned Dehan, and I host Black Box Online Radio, and I released the interview with Aphrodite Jones for Zodiac Monday.
And we have Adam. Welcome, Adam. Welcome in the panel. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Druzer's older brother, and I'm here mostly to harass him throughout the show, give him a hard time. No, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. Drew and I made many films together over the years, and I manage a live music venue, which is where I am in my office tucked away right now, so my kids can't disturb us.
It's live.
Thanks. I spent many years from, I guess, maybe like 2012 to, I spent about 5-6 years very deep into the Zodiac case. And Drew and I were I got him sucked into it, sort of doing research for a possible film on it. And I took one suspect, or I came up with a suspect, and spent a number of years, who I still think is a good suspect, but I spent a number of years going in deep and sort of building like geo-profiling maps and stuff of every place this person had been in cold click cases nearby, and spent a long time on it. And sort of eventually, I was very tempted to start sharing all this stuff I'd learned, but sort of eventually came to the realization that without some sort of DNA match or something like that I was not going to be able to prove this gentleman was the Zodiac, and decided to sort of to put it aside. And I've spent a lot of time in other true crime topics, sort of a hobby. But yeah, I've been out of Zodiac for a number of years, except for a few things suck me in now and then, and I'll go and harass Drew and Richard about what I think I've found. But I asked Drew if I could be a part of this, because I've been watching it. I've seen all except for the latest one. And what I love, as someone who knows a lot about the Zodiac, is to be able to hear experts talk in depth about specific topics without all the explaining of the basic sort of canon of the Zodiac. Like if I have to hear the basics of Lake Herman Road or Paul Stein or Lake Berryessa again, I just can't take hearing the basics. So it's nice to sort of put the basics aside and see people speaking very civilly about specific topics. I really love that, and especially not having Thomas Horan here to dominate the conversation is a major draw.
Yeah, I do agree. So we are going to jump on Druzer, because it's because of your brother that you are here today, Druzer.
Yeah, well, Adam's certainly the one who got me into this. I don't know how many whiskey nights on the porch we had before I finally got sucked in. So where do you want to start?
I jump on Eduard. Ed, thank you very much for joining us again.
Yeah,
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm just listening to Adam's story, and it's fun to see that Adam is the reason Druzer is here. So that's great to see the guy behind Druzer.
The puppet master pulling the strings. Yeah.
yeah, the puppet master. Yeah, it's because Adam said he doesn't like to really get into the canonical murders. Maybe we can discuss possible attacks before the Zodiac crime. I see a lot of people searching the newspapers from that time, from that era, to check for possible murders connected with Zodiac.
Excellent.
Like things like written notes in a crime. So maybe that's a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump on Richard, but just before, I would like to say thank you to Megan to be the second member of the channel, and thank you to Charlie, the first one. So now I have 2 new members in the membership, but I jump on Richard. Richard, how are you doing, my friend?
Hiya, Jerome. Nice to see you again. Nice to see some new guests again. And I'm Richard Grinnell, that old git from Zodiac Ciphers.
A great website, the best one.
Well, that's
So-
nice of you to say so, but I'm sure there's certain
Agreeing.
people. I'm sure there's certain people that will disagree.
Oh, yeah, yeah, maybe, but for me, it's the best one. Really. And I don't say that because you are there. I say that because it's true. It's the better website.
Yeah,
Oh.
what you were talking about on Discord or mentioning about crimes that weren't likely committed by the Zodiac Killer, but to be considered as possible Zodiac crimes, even though I don't think this is a Zodiac crime. You were talking about the Hood and Garcia murders in 1970.
Yeah.
That's something you haven't covered yet. And you were talking about that on Discord, weren't you? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can hear you, but
Yes.
you are talking about who, Richard?
I think he
Who
was
are you
asking-
talking
I
about?
think he was asking
Oh,
you about your thoughts.
John Franklin Hood and Sandra Garcia from February the 21st, 1970. The only reason I mentioned it was because Zodiac claimed he was looking for victim 9 and 10 in December 69. He'd claimed 10 victims by April 1970, and bisecting those two dates was the double murder of Hood and Garcia. So
Ah, yeah.
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 now I don't think it's anything to do with the Zodiac Killer, but nonetheless, it's got probably more going for it than Dominguez and Edwards.
Yeah.
Oh, is that
Yeah.
right, Richard?
I thought
Yeah,
it was interesting in your research, Richard, that you actually thought it had more linkage with the Gaviota murders than anything in the Zodiac canon. Could you expand on
I
that
don't
a bit?
know.
Well, the interesting thing I found about the crime, as you know, they were found on a beach, and he was stabbed 11 times in the face and back, and she was left unrecognizable. And what I found interesting was that they were covered by a green blanket and they were placed alongside each other. And he was face down in the sand, she was face up. And if you remember the Dominguez and Edwards murders, even though they're on top of each other, one was face down, one was face up. And of course, it was a double murder and they were only 30 miles apart. Now, I don't think they were more than likely committed by the same individuals, because I think it was one person probably for Dominguez and Edwards, and it was two people for Hood and Garcia, because at 1 o'clock the following morning, there were two lads seen in a service station who were cleaning wounds from their body. And when questioned by somebody, they stated they'd had a fight on the beach, exactly where the couple were murdered. So that's a brief introduction to that crime.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
but something that is really different than the Zodiac murders is that they were naked. They were found naked.
Hood
In
and
the
Garcia,
Gaviota.
Hood and Garcia weren't.
No, that's
One was-
correct.
One was
But the-
found in Levi's and a blouse, and the other was Levi's and a t-shirt.
True, but the other couple were naked.
Linda
was-
Edwards had her swimsuit cut down, and then the swimsuit was apparently pulled open, and her breasts were exposed. So, I mean, I guess, yeah, she's partially nude.
Yeah.
And
They were
there's not
exposed.
100% he did that.
Yes.
I mean, why the murderer did that? He may have just wanted to have a look at her. He may have been trying to commit some type of SA, but, like, it's just part of the mystery.
Am I correct that in the Gaviota murders that the faces were covered?
I don't recall that.
Dominguez and Edwards, there was a story that her face may have been covered by a blanket. which was interesting because Hood and Garcia were covered by a green blanket. No, sorry. In the Dominguez and Edwards case, I think she was covered by a towel, wasn't she?
Yeah, and I didn't know that for the longest time, and I'm still not 100% on the details. So the lad was found face down, and she was on top of him face up, and then her face was covered. And they were in a shack wherein they really couldn't have been arranged any differently because it was very small. Is that
the shack was really small? Yeah.
Yeah, and the strange thing about the Hood and Garcia murders is they claimed a knife was buried in the sand 1 foot away from the bodies. But I interpreted that a little bit different in the sense that doesn't mean it's a deliberate action. If there was a melee and punches were thrown because they were beaten and stabbed, it's quite conceivable that one of the assailants in that crime dropped the knife or it came out of his pocket, and then while they were treading around on the sand, it may have got buried or immersed in the sand and therefore was out of sight, because this was dark on that beach. It was a full moon, but it was dark. And so the police found that knife 1 foot from the bodies, and it had they didn't recognize that this was the murder weapon, even several months after the crime, which should have been pretty obvious if it was covered in blood and it had been used to stab the victims. Now, if it had no blood on it, then logically you'd have to assume that it was lost by one of the assailants because it was so close to the bodies, and there must have been a second knife involved in the crime. Because let's be honest, if you just stabbed somebody, you wouldn't bury the knife 1 foot away, you would throw it in the ocean. So my guess is that knife was lost, and because it had no blood on it, tends to suggest to me that there were two assailants and the blooded knife was taken away. So I believe they were both attacked by two people, which links back to the two people found who were observed in the service station washing down wounds. I think they are the likeliest suspects in this crime.
And yet this is another crime, and I suppose this is consistent with Zodiac, is that there was no evidence of robbery or SA, I guess, as we say on YouTube. Very strange.
This was in Santa Barbara, is that right?
Yes, it was Santa Barbara Cemetery Beach. You know Santa Barbara Cemetery? Santa Barbara Cemetery is on top of a cliff. So somebody couldn't have walked from the cemetery easily down a massive cliff. The only access from the cemetery was on its west side. So more than likely, the assailants came along the beach from either the built-up area on the west or from the east side. But yeah, this is 30 miles from the Dominguez and Edwards murders in 1970.
Looks like February 21st, 1970. Is that
That's correct? Yeah.
So if these two guys at the gas station did commit the crime, and they're telling someone that they got in a fight to explain the blood that they're cleaning up, I wonder why they would link themselves to that site.
And maybe they panicked. But what I found strange also is when they arrived at that beach, it would have been 6:30. Sunset was about 5:45. So they entered that beach in the dark. And if they were stabbed and those two lads had stabbed them and gone to the service station at 1 o'clock the following morning, the likelihood is they would have been stabbed close to midnight, which means they would have been on that beach for at least 5.5 to 6 hours. And this was February. I doubt it was particularly warm.
Those are strange circumstances.
Yes, and how did the killers see them in the dark from the cliff?
Were they partying on the beach already there? Were they just? I mean, Hood and Garcia had walked along the beach at 6:30 in the dark when they arrived at the cemetery beach. they entered the beach probably 6:15. This was about half a mile along the beach from the main area, built up area. So why did they choose to go to a beach in pitch darkness and stay there for 5.5 hours? This is the question. They could have been followed there. They could have been, but then again, if they were killed around 7 o'clock, those two lads in the service station took 6 hours to go and wash their wounds off, which doesn't seem to make much sense.
It's hard not to focus on those young guys because that's all we have.
Yeah, no, we never traced.
It would be interesting to know a little bit more about Hood and Garcia's plans that night, whether there was a liquor bottle or what exactly they were doing.
Yeah, just sitting in the moonlight, having a lover's tryst. Who knows? It's not unheard of, is it?
No, and were they married, to your knowledge?
That's a good question.
I feel like they were, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I don't see anything particularly strange about going onto the beach, but spending 5.5 hours there seems a little bit excessive, but that's just me.
Yeah, like the coroner didn't say that they were killed at midnight. We don't know precisely when. Is that correct?
Yeah, they could have been killed at 7 o'clock, and those two lads had nothing to do with it. But they are the likeliest suspects at the moment. And if they were the perpetrators, then if Hood and Garcia were killed at 7 o'clock, we do have a 6-hour delay while they're washing off their wounds, which to me doesn't make much sense.
No, neither does them placing themselves at the scene of the crime, unless they had already been seen by someone and they knew that it would come out where their whereabouts was. That's not good form for a criminal.
Wait. Oh, sorry, Druzer. I thought you were finished. We just have a comment here from Megan that I would like to get to, and it says, covering a face and body like that shows care for them. I mean, personal connections normally. I'm so glad Megan brought that up because that was the first thing that I was thinking. If the fact that they're going to be covered by a blanket, it's not 100% certain, but that is a reasonable thing to think about. I mean, like John Douglas likes to talk about this stuff all the time, about how if somebody is placing the body in some type of respectful way, like covering the victim even, that can mean that there is a personal connection. And Megan, I also appreciate the comment, I love watching Ned and Druzer's facial expressions, TBH.
We do.
When you see something in the chat or is an interesting question, tell me. Like this, I can see because the chat turned crazy. So, but thank you all. Thank you, Gloria Man, to become the third person to be member of the panel. Thank you very much. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Megan's bang on with what little we know. The most reasonable explanation is that they were killed for personal reasons.
Yeah. but also they were beaten with either a blunt object or fists, and they were stabbed. And it's strange, if this was a dynamic, violent attack, clearly the killers then dragged the bodies together and placed them alongside to put the blanket over the top of them. Can you hear a strange noise?
Yeah, just because I was watching the other day the documentary on Amanda Knox, I was thinking about something that the cops were saying about the blanket on Meredith Kushner bodies. He was talking about that only a woman could do this kind of thing because she has some regrets or some stuff like this. What do you think about that? Because I'm not a cop and I'm not...
Well, I read something that was called in psychological terms, psychological undoing. In other words, that you're so horrified by the attack that you've just committed, you need to cover the face of the victim. Now, we've got to remember there may have been more than one individual involved in this murder, One of them
Yeah.
may have been perfectly satisfied with what he'd done and had no regret whatsoever, but his accomplice may have been quite shocked by what happened. You just don't know. But there is a thing called psychological undoing, which means you cover the face of the person you've just killed. It doesn't necessarily mean you know the person you've killed.
No, and you probably you always see people hearing about serial killers dehumanizing their victims. This is also a way to dehumanize, because you don't have a face anymore at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was not a problem for Jack the Ripper in the Mary Kelly's killing. And yeah, for John Bennett Ramsey, it was the same. Her body was covered with a blanket.
Yeah.
But I'm not an expert, so that's why I'm asking you what do you think about that, because
Yeah,
it
and
could be something.
And because it was a dynamic attack, I doubt they both fell alongside each other perfectly aligned. So they were moved and then covered, just like Dominguez and Edwards were moved and covered. And the positions of the body facing up and down were identical as well. And they were 30 miles apart. Now, I'm not saying it was the same perpetrators, but they're the sort of connections between the two crimes if you want to compare them.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's also likely that the Domingos and Edwards crimes were committed by more than one individual?
No, I think that was committed by one person.
And is it the similarities to Domingos and Edwards that makes people think it might be Zodiac, or just the fact that it's a double murder near the water? What are people seeing as the Zodiac connection here?
I would actually like to take this one because, Adam, I think that it's a very good question. I don't see anything Zodiac related in the Hood Garcia murders. Think about the stuff that they've been talking about, beating somebody, stabbing somebody in the face. I mean, this sounds like an intense overkill kind of murder. And the Zodiac Killer was not about overkill. He was, he had multiple opportunities to brutalize the victims and mutilate them. He didn't do it. I think that this is a completely different perpetrator.
Well, I guess Lake Berryessa, there was you could call that mutilation, but very different.
But not overkill. Not overkill to the point where it's extremely excessive. You know, like the Snoozy and Furlong murders where the victims were stabbed 100 and 200 times. The Zodiac stayed away from all of that stuff. That just doesn't appear to be the type of killer that he was. Because when I think of the Zodiac, I think of somebody who is trying to commit these murders, and he doesn't even care too much about this. He's only committing the murders to get his name into the paper so that they will talk about him, so he can post his ciphers, which I think he loved. Robert Graysmith called the Zodiac ciphers works of art. I think the Zodiac thought the same way. He wanted to be mentioned in the paper, and he wanted to show off his creations.
Yeah, what I think strange is the disparity in the publicity that the two cases get. One is a stabbing on a beach, similar to the Berryessa involving a knife. The other one is a shooting of a couple on a beach. One is in the Zodiac timeline. One is well before the Zodiac timeline. One marries up with the victim counts he was claiming, and the other one doesn't match anything. We don't know that there was any pre-cut lengths of bindings used in the Dominguez and Edwards murders. So if anything, there's more linking the Hood and Garcia murders than the Dominguez and Edwards murders, yet one receives massive attention and one receives next to nothing.
Well, that's certainly because of the assumption that there was bindings at the Gaviota Beach murders. I agree that without them, there is very little to suggest Zodiac's involvement. But I'm not prepared to say that there wasn't bindings there. I'm not sure where that came from. The only thing we have is that there was a complex knot found on the beach. We know that from the newspaper. But the work of John Averett, who presumably has seen the police reports, but I don't know. He said it matter-of-factly that they were discovered, but of course, we don't have the documents.
we know there was one piece of rope found on the beach that had 2 marlin hitch knots.
Yeah, that doesn't do it. That doesn't do it. We need to know whether they actually found a bunch of pre-cut bindings. Like, where on earth would that come from? Otherwise,
And when this crime occurred?
63.
In 63.
Yeah, June 4th or 5th, I think.
June 4th.
Okay, and about the crime in 1970?
February 21st.
So,
Richard has a really good point, though, about how the Hood and Garcia murders are very rarely talked about. And it was years before I was in the Zodiac world, before I even heard of them. And even on one of these panel discussions, like, that was one of the crimes that just slipped my mind. And I was asking Druzer or else, wait a second, is this the one where where there's the stabbing in the face and the beating? And you guys said yes. I got, just because they're not widely discussed. And there are a lot of similarities between the Domingos Edwards murders and the Hood and Garcia murders, as you guys laid out. But at the same time, based on the amount of years that have gone by, based on the differences that do exist, the shooting versus the stabbing, I would probably expect that they were different perpetrators. But I do confess, kind of like what Richard said, they are very similar.
Yeah, the only strange thing was whether Zodiac knew about this crime or not, because on April the 20th, like I said, he said, "Can you figure out who I killed?"
Mm-hmm.
And his victim count went up by 2. So he's certainly claiming 2 victims between December the 20th, 1969 and April the 20th, 1970. Who those 2 are, we don't know.
but don't you think that Zodiac, he was really narcissistic, he was really egocentric, he was really, a weak persona. And don't you think it was more better for him, I'm going to say, to claim this crime? Sorry, don't you think it was better for him to claim this crime, or he was playing with the press and the police, and so don't tell the name of everybody who he has killed, but sometimes give some names? But why?
Why? I think with Zodiac, in my opinion, the more crimes that he can have people think that he committed, the harder it is going to be to find out who he actually is. I think that he's probably committed more than we know, but I think it was a stroke of brilliance after Paul Stein to say that he's no longer going to claim his murders, that they're going to look like accidents. I think the more murders that we think Zodiac did that he didn't do, the harder it is to connect any suspect to all of them. My 2 cents.
I think that's absolutely correct. It was actually a month after Paul Stein, though, that he wrote that in the letter. He wrote it the day after he enciphered a message saying that he had enough slaves for his afterlife.
Yeah.
And, essentially, I'm retiring from the killing and telling you about it business. And I think that and that's also when he started putting a kill tally in all of his letters. I think it's completely transparent that he was bullshitting with all of that.
Yeah, he was bullshitting the moment he claimed 7.
Yeah, I mean,
but
there's no contender for August. It seems like he was talking about Snoozy and Furlong, but we know that he didn't commit those crimes. So I don't know. Go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, same with I killed a man with a 38 sitting in a car. It's trying to tell everyone he did something, but he can't prove it himself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comment here from Death by Stereo, who says, "It's foolish to claim a crime you didn't commit. If it gets solved and it wasn't you," and just says ... but meaning that,
Yeah.
like, why would he claim crimes that he didn't commit? Well, we see very clearly with the Snoozy and Furlong murders, he's upping the body count, and it turns out that it's someone else named Carl F. Warner gets convicted, and it really hasn't affected the Zodiac's reputation too much. And even though the Zodiac was a terrible person, I do think he had just a little bit of awareness on how the media functions and how police investigations function. Now, I don't know if we can read too much into that, but I don't think he would have been bothered too much if he's like going to be claiming crimes. Like, I gave a ride to a woman and her baby a couple months back. I shot a man in a car with a .38. All of that stuff might be BS. And I think that he would have done that because with the Kathleen Johns incident, I don't think it was the Zodiac Killer. I don't even think an incident happened. I think she made the whole thing up. Rest in peace. I don't mean to call her a liar post-mortem, but I just did. And what he was probably thinking was, the amount of time has gone by where it's not going to be solved. Because as I said, I think he knew some things about police procedures. Was he a cop? I really don't know. I mean, but it definitely seems like the Zodiac knows what he's doing.
He never gave names of victims he claimed to have killed. So he kept it in the dark, and that was smart.
Yeah, he kept it vague and he let time pass. As you said, it was like 6 months later for Kathleen Johns. It was 3 months later for Snoozy and Furlong. The Radatich insinuation was not long before, but as you guys said, but he kept it vague. A man with a .38, that could be anyone.
Like Cherry Joe Bates. It was just
Absolutely.
Yes. It was the same.
Yeah, they're more in the south. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to have you talked about that. He's claiming to, when he's talking about his activity in Riverside, he claimed to the police that they only have the easy one. What do you think it means? It means for him, for the Zodiac. That means that he had killed more people in Riverside before.
No, he's just leaving his options open, I think. That's why he didn't claim Sherry Joe Bates' murder. He said Riverside activity. That could encompass his letters, the desktop poem, etc., and the murder. So I just think he's leaving his options open by keeping it vague.
Yeah, and because he kept it vague, especially telling what he was going to do, it spread terror. So everyone thought, yeah, maybe he can get to me.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't say anything about murdering Sherry Joe Bates. And I know you guys have already said this really clearly, but that's one thing that just always bothered me about that. It's like he's giving the hint or the suggestion, yeah, this is the crime that I committed, my Riverside activity, but who even knows what he's referring to directly? So that's why, I mean, when Mike Morford likes to talk about this a lot, following the evidence as opposed to just trying to get inside somebody's mind, look at what's stated in the letters and look at, the possibilities that it could be pointing to. And in all reality, I've seen the Zodiac Killer prove that he committed crimes, details that only he and the police know. Also, Paul Stein's shirt, with everything else that we've been talking about. Domingos, Edward, Sherry Joe Bates, Kathleen Johns, Richard Radatich. I'm not seeing any hard evidence that this guy actually committed those crimes.
Nope.
Yeah, he went out of his way to prove involvement. He did countless things to show consistency in his letters, to show details that weren't in the press, and he had clearly gone through the old papers and read all the articles. I'm sure he kept them.
Why do you think he added the plus to the 17? Was that to intimate more crimes down south?
I assume so.
In my opinion, he was talking about his age, but it's just my opinion.
But
That
some
he was
people,
always-
He was keeping a scorecard: police 0 and Zodiac 17, for example.
but some
So
people
probably-
think like the stuff, like the plus signs are mathematical symbols, you know, like going down the pathways of Gareth Penn, and they are just they might have a different meaning altogether.
Yeah, we see that a lot, but and we see it with the Exorcist Me 37 SFPD 0. It's certainly incoherent if he means something other than a death toll. But who knows?
But there's one big difference. If you go up to March the 13th, 1971, he's being reasonable with the incremental victim count.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's adding 1, 2, 3 at a time. When we get to the Exis letter and the 1986 letter claiming 37 and 100, he's just throwing numbers out there. I think in the early crimes, when he was claiming more people than we could, like say the Halloween card claims 14, I still think he had some people in mind that he was going to claim or had been killed in the area to increase that total and make it realistic. But I think that went out the window when it got to the Exis letter, and it got to obviously 1986 when he claimed 100 plus.
An interesting thing that I think about is the 13 hole card, where he's saying the pace isn't any slower, presuming it was Zodiac. The pace isn't any slower. In fact, it's one big 13th. But if he was the Zodiac Killer, he'd claimed that like 4 months ago, that there was 13. So it seems sort of like the pace did slow, didn't it?
Yes.
It did, but also, as we've said before, he later claimed the murder of Donna Lass, yet he never increased the victim total after her disappearance.
Which sort of makes sense, because a week or two earlier he had made his claim 17 plus, and now almost as a postscript he's describing earlier ones.
Well, I was going to say, it does make sense in a way, because he knew she had disappeared. She hadn't been murdered yet. So the victim count, in theory, wouldn't go up because she is not actually deceased yet. So maybe he was intimating that he was holding her captive.
That's certainly possible, especially considering when did they find her skull? It was in the mid-'80s?
86.
86, yeah. So it's certainly possible that she was held captive for an unknown length of time before being disposed of.
And
But
maybe
it was-
why he waited to do the Pines card 5 months later, because he wanted to keep open the possibility that she may have been found and not connected to him in some way. So he left it a considerable amount of time before he claimed her.
Mm-hmm. Like, I know a lot of people would think that, oh, well, that's not Zodiac to do an abduction and to hold someone captive, but I always think we really don't know what Zodiac's MO was. You know, we know about the canonical crimes, and everything else is sort of a guessing game, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really nothing to say that he didn't have intentions towards robbery or sex in other crimes. Like, just because, I mean, if you are sort of a sex killer and you decide that you want to start messing with the police, then I think that's a separate project.
Yeah, it could be something that he was, potentially ashamed of, that he would want the creepy sex crimes to be under a different persona or an unknown persona, and he would keep the Zodiac sort of for these more wholesome murders.
Yeah, well, just as Bundy went to the chair without describing some of the younger victims that he had taken.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, but
At the same time, I'd say there's nothing to suggest that he was doing crimes for sex or money either.
Mm-hmm.
no, but there is nothing to refute that either. So No, but it's good to have this debate, because like this we can see different possibility, and we stay open-minded. So it's always good to have the opinion of everyone.
Right. We have one thing here in the chat from Megan, who says, holding Donna last captive. In my opinion, I don't think the Zodiac had time to do that. I think he had a normal job Monday through Friday, but that's just me. Well, Donna Lass was abducted just before 2 a.m. on September 6th of 1970. So even if this guy has a 9 to 5 job, or maybe it's a different job like 10 to 6, I mean, he would have had all night to do something. And, you know, in the Lake Tahoe area, he could have driven her to a number of locations to hold her captive and still gone to work the next day. Just putting some stuff out there. But we actually had another question that I wanted to ask. Somebody was asking, Druzer, what is that behind you? Is that a television or a microwave?
That's a kitten bed.
It's a
Like,
microwave. He
cats in
puts his
there.
cats in when they're bad.
Yeah, I also put in Mr. Invisible, the Invisible Man.
Visible Man, wow. That was
Yeah.
from Altug, who says, I like Druzer's microwave oven. And Gorilla Train said, I think that's a TV. Turns out it's a cat. Who knew?
What you gonna do?
Yeah, but also when Donna Lass disappeared, it's quite conceivable the Zodiac Killer could have been on holiday. We all get holidays. He could have been self-employed, anything. Just
Absolutely.
because, you know.
When would University get out? Because this was September 6th. That would certainly be the incident.
Ooh.
Now, a lot of universities go back to class like at the beginning of September and sometimes even the beginning of August. With one suspect, I looked into his university and they started August 31st, but that was on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm. And I think Lake Tahoe was sort of from what I've read, was like the most popular weekend getaway for anyone in the Bay Area. A huge place for young people to go and to work as well.
Okay, it was becoming that at that time. It was, I think, it was growing very quickly from a very small community to a few years later, quite large.
Oh yeah, and also rich people, and also people from the mob. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And there was a travel agency that advertised just near Melvin Belli's house, wasn't there?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you could also get a bus trip from Vallejo.
Mm.
So, Richard? I'm curious. Where have you landed on Donna Lass, or what are you feeling these days? Do you think she's a Zodiac victim?
Well, as Druzer knows, I've flip-flopped on this a million times. I used to believe it was the strongest possibility for a Zodiac crime outside the canonical attacks. Then I switched to there was no chance it was Zodiac. But ever since I've examined that Pines card, I've switched back the other way. I'm really torn between the two now, because either I've just fluked on some measurements that just point to her body that Zodiac claimed. I'm convinced he sent the Pines card, and that's what's confusing me, because I don't particularly believe he killed Donna Lass, yet the measurements that are quite easy to do, they're quite plain, seem to point a knowledge of the location her skull was found. Even taking away the measurements, just flipping out the card, you've got Claire Tappan Lodge and the Sierra Club, and the hole is directly in line to the west. So, and that's exactly where her body was found. You know, so it's food for thought, but I'm torn between the two now. I'm 50-50. If I had to plumb one way or the other, I'd say that she wasn't a Zodiac victim.
Interesting. And with this discovery about, was it Joseph Holt? Was that his name? It's been a few months, but I think we discussed a bit at the time how apparently Joseph Holt had done a very similar thing to Donna Lass, where he had abducted and murdered that girl whose name is escaping.
Bryn Rainey, 1977.
Yeah, and had done the same thing where he had called Sierra Tahoe Hotel and said that she wouldn't be coming into work because she was ill, something like that.
Yeah, that's another spanner in the works of Zodiac, because he's the prime candidate for the murder of Donna Lass, I feel, especially with a phone call delivered to the Sahara Tahoe Hotel in similar vein to the Donna Lass case. It's hard to ignore. There's 7 years between the crimes, and it's not impossible that two people couldn't have done the same thing, but it's the best thing we've got so far to connect anybody to the Donna Lass case, I feel.
And I don't think, like, of the probably thousands of murders that I've read about, it's the only other case where I've heard of the killer or potentially the killer calling the victim's work to give an excuse as to why they're not there to buy sort of a few more days before people realize that this person is missing. Have you ever heard of another case where someone does that, let alone at the same hotel?
Not really, but Ted Bundy was a kind of person who were able to do this kind of thing. And for me, I see more a Ted Bundy modus operandi than Zodiac. But like you have said before, we don't know what was the Zodiac plan. So it could be the Zodiac, but I don't know. I think we are here more with a Ted Bundy crime, and because we don't know how much people he killed.
And Joseph Stephen Holt buried Bryn Rainey in a shallow grave. So he was clearly trying to delay the investigation.
Yeah.
So my question is, why did it take so long to find the remains of Donna Lass? Was she also partially buried and parts of her skeleton were unearthed over time?
There in the chat, there are some people talking about the snow that we see in the card. So maybe we can address that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of snow.
Yes, I mean, it shows implicit knowledge of where she was found. She was found in 2 centimeters of snow at the time in 1986, I think, or something like that. And she was found an area where there were pine trees, which marries up perfectly with the Pines card. So, like we said before, she could have been disposed of in many different ways within the town itself. But I think she was found at high altitude, where you're more likely to find snow, and there were plenty of pine trees. I know that the whole of Lake Tahoe was smothered in pine trees, but still, it narrows down knowledge of this person on the Pines card, coupled with the whole, the Sierra Club, all that lines up, and it makes you think twice about whether the Zodiac was involved. But if it was Joseph Stephen Holt, did he create the Pines card? That's another question.
Well, I mean, that's right where it eventually leads you, right? Is there any possibility that Holt was the Zodiac?
It's a possibility.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Or he was just conveniently using the Zodiac Killer to pass off a murder of his own.
Mm-hmm. So just to back up for a second, in September of 1970, when Donna went missing, did we have full snow coverage at that point as well?
It's possible. In Lake Tahoe, they put out notices that there will be snow year round, like 12 months a year in certain places. So I'm not 100% sure if she was just her property was placed in an area that had snow, but it's not uncommon for Lake Tahoe to have snow in September.
Because I remember
Well-
when they did the search, there was too much snow and it thwarted their efforts. But they
Yeah.
didn't report on this immediately. So I'm wondering if weeks earlier that was still the case. Assuming
was-
that whoever killed her buried her right away, would there have been snow?
There was a newspaper report with Chief Luritzen, who stated the search will have to be suspended until the spring because of the snow coverage on the ground.
That's right.
I don't know the exact date of that newspaper article, but I'm assuming they were searching immediately after she disappeared. So my guess is there probably was coverage.
Yeah. Well, two weeks after she disappeared, though, because she wasn't reported on the 6th.
That's true. That's true. I couldn't answer that. I'd have to go back and look at a weather report for that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, we will check. And
At any rate, I would like to know when Holt was at Berkeley, when he graduated, and whether September 6th would have been time off from school if he was still enrolled.
But by the way, there is another question in the chat that I would like to answer. This is from Cat Daddy Steve, who says, "Why didn't the Zodiac Killer prey on streetwalker prostitutes? They are easy prey, and they could rack up a big body count and slaves, in quotation marks." I think that I can answer this one. Number one, Pat Brown, the criminal profiler, likes to talk about how there are different types of serial killers. Number one, but people who would prey on prostitutes are frequently the ruse killers, where they make up a silly story and then they try to like lure them to a particular place and then commit the crimes. Now, this needs to be partnered with a second statement, and that is that the Zodiac does not seem to want to do that unless he is in complete control. And he makes up a story at Lake Berryessa. "I'm an escaped convict from Montana. All I want's your money," and that stuff. But he doesn't do that until he has the perimeter. He's like, he knows everything that's in his surroundings. He's holding them up at gunpoint. I think that if he were going to go after street walking prostitutes, there would be too much of an opportunity for them to fight back. So what does the Zodiac do in most of his other crimes? He's what Pat Brown calls a bop and drop killer. Commits the crime and then leaves as quickly as possible without any setup. So I just think that the Zodiac would not have taken the risks to attack streetwalkers. I don't think the Zodiac Killer murdered Sherry Jo Bates for the same reason. She had the opportunity to fight back. This is one of the few consistencies in the Zodiac case. All the victims are either immobilized, they are in a defenseless position. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard are tied up so they can't do anything to stop the Zodiac. And I just don't think the Zodiac would have taken risks like that.
I mean,
I
and
agree.
it's of course it's always possible that he was killing prostitutes that we just don't know about. But it seems that I don't know when you're deep into the murder world, there's more of a prestige. Like, I mean, Bundy is considered, more of a prestigious killer because he's killing college girls as opposed to prostitutes. And I mean, like, so you got to wonder if he thought it was better media exposure to be killing, teen couples or college couples, where it's going to be a lot bigger headline than it is to kill a prostitute.
Agreed.
do you think it was premeditated to kill this kind of people? So young people, targeting young people. Do you think
Zodiac?
it was premeditated? Yeah, in his mind. He chose by himself to killing those kind of people because
Yeah, he started with young people, but he killed Stein as well.
Yeah, that's what always messes everything up, isn't it? Stein,
Yeah.
where he breaks the mold. And even Stein, to kill a cab driver, there's not much of an easier target than killing a cab driver who's pretty much defenseless and taking strangers into their cab.
Yeah, but he was in Presidio Heights, and that was a high class neighborhood instead of lover lanes.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about.
Go ahead, Richard.
Sorry, you're talking about would he murder prostitutes? What about the finding of Craigle, where Jackie Truss was found murdered and her body found on Laurel Street in Presidio Heights on October the 24th, 1970, 3 days before the Halloween card, and the newspaper reported that she was tortured by fire.
I'm not really familiar with this one, but I'm going to
Yeah, her body was. This is a couple of blocks down from, it was Jackson Street, ran across it. And of course, this was 3 days before the Halloween card, and she was tortured by fire. And Craigle mentioned that it's odd because the letter before the Halloween card, if you discount the 13-hole postcard, he was mentioning about torturing his slaves in paradise. Then he mentioned the murders by fire, by gun, by rope, and by knife. And then 3 days before that, this woman was stabbed, dumped in Presidio Heights, and the newspaper mentioned she was tortured by fire. I thought that was quite relevant, bearing in mind the proximity to the Halloween card.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't mean he murdered her. It just means he may have been inspired to do the Halloween card because of that murder. And he knew the proximity of it to his crime in Presidio Heights.
So probably he tried to imply himself that he could have done it.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. He could have interjected himself to make the police think he was involved with that crime. How daring to dump a body just a couple of blocks from where he was supposedly seen by Officer Donald Fouke.
What does tortured by fire mean? Do we know what that means specifically?
She was burnt by her killer, and I think she
must have been alive then, if they're saying tortured.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact wording, but also this was reported in the newspapers by Paul Avery. And the Halloween card was mailed to Paul Avery.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
So
That's really interesting, yes.
That's another connection. I can't remember all the details on it because Craigle sent me it a couple of months ago. So, obviously I haven't read it recently. So have a check of that, Ned, or if you want to find out about it. It's still on my front page.
Yeah,
Richard, was that murder, that lady that was burned, was it big news in the media?
Well, I don't know what page it was on, but it did mention there were 2 other prostitutes killed. I think she was a black woman, and there were 2 other murders in close proximity. I think before her murder. So I don't think it obviously had any connection to Zodiac, but he may have just latched onto it, like you said, because of the proximity of where she was found to his previous crime. It just may have inspired him to produce the Halloween card, that's all. But clearly it wasn't him.
Why is it clear that it wasn't him?
Well, I think they've got an idea that he killed all 3 prostitutes. So unless he's claiming all 3,
I see.
Well, it's not impossible. I'm just saying it's unlikely.
But it definitely remains unsolved, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay, but I would like to come back to something because Jerome asked a very good question, and he asked us, are the Zodiac crimes premeditated? And I think that the only one that might not be premeditated would be Lake Herman Road, because there could be just something about a guy's driving down the road, all of a sudden he sees these 2 teenagers in a car, and that bothers him, that sets him off, he gets triggered for some reason. I think almost certainly Presidio Heights and Lake Berryessa were mega premeditated. I mean, it's not like he just had the Lake Berryessa hood lying around in his car or something like that. I think that was specifically designed for the murders. Blue Rock Springs, I guess it possibly couldn't be, but I think it was. I think after Lake Hermit Road, those 3 crimes would definitely be premeditated, calculated. He had a plan. He was dwelling on it in his mind for a very long time. Most likely Lake Hermit Road, too. It's just the possibility exists that that was not something that he went out to do that night.
Yeah, I like the thinking of it as more of an organic process. In December 20th, I don't think he could have expected to find a parking couple, certainly not at a specific location. So while killing may have been on his mind, he may have had his gun and possibly a flashlight attached in his car at all times.
Cruising around in his death machine.
Exactly, cruising around. I think he found that by happenstance. But then after having done this, when he wants to make a big media campaign out of it, I think it is then an advantage to him to find another young couple parked in a nearby in a similar setting, so that when the police came upon it, the connection would be easier to believe. They would in fact link them before he mentioned it, because as I said, he did a lot to prove his involvement. And then having killed 2 couples in a row, and now he wants to go farther afield, he's going to have to prove that it's himself again. He'll be he's now communicating with a different police department. So again, it's an advantage to again kill a couple, because they'll know it was him.
But Druzer,
Yeah.
do you think that Lake Herman Road was his first murder? Because what you are telling us could very well be the story that it was his really first murder.
It wouldn't shock me if it was his first murder, but I tend to think that it wasn't. Although on the whole, it seems that the attention from the media was driving him more than the urge to kill. But he still killed these 2 kids for no reason, no financial gain, no sexual this, that, and the other. It probably had nothing to do with drugs or any kind of business arrangement. He killed them in cold blood, and he didn't write to the press about it. So this is an unrepentant psychopath who I take at his word he enjoyed killing.
He inferred it was his first murders because in the bus bomb letter he said, asked the Vallejo cop about when I started collecting my slaves. Now, slaves doesn't necessarily equate to first murders, but he's sort of insinuating that's when he started at Lake Herman Road, where he was using the pencil flashlight. And he's talking about Jack Stilts when he's referring to the Vallejo cop.
Yeah, and arguably restated on the car door at Lake Berryessa. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So the question is either is he looking at the Zodiac project when he gives these dates and these totals?
They were his safest murders, weren't they? If you think where he committed that crime at Lake Herman Road, there was the Marshall Ranch nearby. That was about it. Okay, he didn't know about the drugs bust at the cottage. But then Blue Rock Springs was a little bit more risky, and then he went to Berryessa, which was far riskier, and then Presidio Heights. So you could argue that Lake Herman Road was the safest crime to commit. So we can see the progression.
True.
Yeah, you can see the progression, him getting more invested, more daring.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
I always wondered with Paul Stein whether that murder, whether he waited until after he knew he'd gotten away with it before claiming it as his own. So I always think with all the other cab murders and robberies that were going on in San Francisco at that time, that if he felt that he wasn't going to get away with it, or that, maybe someone had seen him better than Fook, that he wouldn't have claimed it, and then it would have just been chalked up to another cab driver murder in San Francisco. But since he knows, he's like, well, I think I got away cleanly, it's safe to put that under my Zodiac persona.
Well,
Yeah, the media made him like a sexual deviant, not really a man, and maybe that was the reason he claimed another victim, which was a man, all alone.
I do think he may have switched it up for that reason, Edward. He was described as a sex-crazed maniac after the Lake Berryessa attack. Now, maybe he liked that. We really don't know. But if he didn't like that persona and he wanted to make it clear that they weren't going to pin him down, then it sort of makes sense for him to break the pattern. But speaking to the witnesses and the decision to claim it, obviously he took the time to take the shirt piece and so forth. But the following day, they wrote an article citing. They didn't mention Falk, but they said that 3 youngsters saw him in the newspaper, and they also said someone else saw him running into the park. So when he did come forward, he probably knew about the sketch. He probably knew about the 3 kids seeing him, and there was this narrative that he had entered the park.
Yeah,
All right,
that's true.
I would just like to say I have to get off the stream now, but Jerome, thank you once again for having me on here. Always much appreciated. Thank you to everybody in the chat. And one more time, my name is Dehan. I'm the host of Black Box Online Radio. And on Black Box Online Radio, I have released a new set of stories in the White Horse Killer saga. That's some fiction that I write. The 4th one is called The Eyes of the White Horse, and that is now available on my YouTube channel. There's also a playlist that has all of the audio books in order, and you can find that on Black Box Online Radio. Adam, it was nice to meet you, and Druzer, Richard, Ed, always great to see you, and thanks again, Jerome.
Cheerio,
Ned.
Ned.
Bye.
Bye, Ned.
I would like to take the time to say that Ned and I, we will start a new video each week on Saturday or Sunday, depending where you are located. But we will do a chat with Ned talking about a different subject every week, and it's the name of the video called Let's Talk with Ned. Yeah. And I to Ross. Ross, what are you doing in the chat, man? Bro, coming here. Come here. What are you doing? But yeah, Ross. Yeah, I would like to talk about the breaking news that Ross had made on his own YouTube channel, Planet X Filmworks. Yeah, the breaking news. The case breaker was wrong. Oh, what a surprise! Gary Francis Post was not the Zodiac Killer. What a surprise!
He was not? Wow.
Wow. It's incredible. I fell off my chair and yeah. No. Really,
Well,
I don't understand that those so-called experts, 40 different experts, could be so wrong about something when people like us don't claim that we have somebody here, somebody who fits 100% the profile. But I don't understand these guys. this is completely crazy. They supposedly be people who know what they are doing, coming from the military, coming from the FBI or the CIA. I don't remember what Tom Colbert was saying, but it looked like 40 people who know what they do, but obviously they don't. So I don't know. And
I
he
wonder if
talks
there's
about
really
that.
40 people.
Well, I think there's actually a distinction between Dale Julin, who is the one who put forth Gary Francis' post, and the case breakers, who seem more like they are just his cheerleaders. I mean, they have some witnesses who knew Post, and for me, the biggest frustration is that we don't know that Gary Francis' Post wasn't the Zodiac, just like we don't know that it wasn't Arthur Lee Allen or anyone else. There's very few people other than Richard Hoffman who we can say was definitely not the killer, because we know his whereabouts when the crime was taking place.
Yeah.
You can say that Arthur Lee Allen was definitely not the Zodiac Killer if you believe the bloody fingerprint was from Zodiac. But the same applies to all the suspects in that case.
Yeah. Or for me, it's got to be a right-hand dominant killer in the Bay Area. I just, it's you have to set some sort of framework if you want to make any progress whatsoever. So we all set out our own foundations, whatever they may be, and none of them are going to be 100%. But truly, it could have been anyone.
What do you think the odds are that the fingerprint on the cab was not Zodiac's?
It depends whether you believe Armand Pellisetti's claim that he saw the bloody fingerprint on the cab when he approached the crime scene. If that's the case, then there's no way on earth that could have been placed there by ambulance staff or anybody thereafter. Short of being the kid's fingerprint, at the one of the three teenagers, Lindsay, it had to be the killer's. But I think that interview with Pellisetti and Michael Butterfield was many years after the crime, so we don't know how accurate that is.
No, that's true.
But it does marry up in the exact position on the dividing panel with where the teenagers said that Zodiac leant into the cab and tried to pull Stein up back into an upright position. And like I've said before, if he went to the driver's side, opened the door, leant in, he'd use his left hand to pull Stein up. He'd have to use his right hand to brace himself on that dividing panel. Otherwise, he'd get pulled into the cab. And that right fingerprint is exactly where you'd expect somebody to brace their right hand if they were hauling Paul Stein up into an upright position. So the kid's second statement sort of backs the position of that fingerprint up. That's the only thing I can say about that fingerprint. That would confirm it was the Zodiac Killer's fingerprint beyond any reasonable doubt anyway.
Yeah, I would like to go on that and talking you a question, because I made this observation the other day. If the Zodiac was in the car, closed door, and he shoot Paul Stein in the head, he must become deaf.
Actually, I've spoken with some people, some gun people about this.
Yeah.
And I think because it was a contact wound, that it would actually dampen the noise a bit. Because that was my assumption too. But gun people say that it probably wouldn't have been that bad.
But do we know if we have recovered burning mark on Paul Stein's head, or
gunshot residue? Yes.
Gunshot residue?
But also, if this crime was pre-planned, he could easily have used some ear defenders inside his ears. He could have used a silencer.
Yep.
Those are two possibilities. Although the three teenagers were, for some reason, alerted to that window. Did they just go there randomly at the same time that cab attack was happening? Or did something draw them to that window? They didn't say they heard a gunshot, but they may have subconsciously been drawn to that window, hearing something outside.
I find it easiest to believe that they heard something which was a gunshot and that brought them to the window, as opposed to they just happened to look out the window. No, we just don't know.
I always assumed that it was the gunshot that drew them to the window, but
one can't always remember, especially if you don't identify the noise as a gunshot.
But also, you've got to remember the pattern of the blood on that shirt. If he shot Paul Stein and he immediately fell into the well of the passenger side, you're never going to get that blood running against gravity and forming that pattern on that shirt. So Paul Stein was upright for a measurable period of time to create that blood pattern on the left and right side of the front of his shirt.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
agreeing. Yeah, that's true.
I would like to thank Sharon for everything she has made. She had made the new graphic, the logo, everything, the intro. She had made everything, and she is the fourth new member of the channel. Thank you, my Wimmy. I love you. So go ahead, continue.
Well done.
Yeah, it's really well done. Yeah.
I was going to ask Ed what he wanted to talk about.
Okay. The Stein murder is interesting because it's in a neighborhood instead of a lover's lane. What are your thoughts about why he picked up Stein? And I don't want to hear a taxi driver is an easy target, but is there something about procedural heights, maybe something interesting? What are your thoughts as panel?
Bigger news. He's going into the big city. It was obviously a conscious change in the pattern that everyone had recognized. Perhaps, as you said earlier, specifically away from the idea that he was some sort of pervert. I think he had his sights on San Francisco from the first letters. Certainly the reach that San Francisco media had at the time, and I think that he knew that the cops would assume that whoever did it made their way to the Golden Gate Bridge, and I think that's why he chose it. Like, he probably did leave via the Golden Gate Bridge, but he put it a few blocks away, so there couldn't be a certainty what direction he went. Of course, he hadn't anticipated being sighted.
Yeah, that's correct, Druzer. If you think about the July the 31st letters, he mentioned in his very first correspondence that he was prepared to target couples or lone or stray people in the night. Mm-hmm. So the idea he set off with the intention of targeting couples is completely thrown out by his first communications with the press. So he may have had the intention to target San Francisco from the very start, like Drew intimated.
Yeah, I think he killed in places where he did not live, and I think he was trying to basically say that he could be out east, could be out north, and then he probably lived elsewhere.
Do you think that the Zodiac was aware that if he kill in San Francisco, he will have Tusky on the case, or
He
I
because
think-
it's one of my
Pretty
theory that killing in San Francisco to have bullet because Steve McQueen was inspired by him, by Tusky, and after a big movie with
Steve McQueen.
Dirty Harry with
Oh, Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Oh, sorry, Clint. I'm sorry. If you're watching the show, I'm sorry.
I
Sometimes
think Tosky's celebrity before Zodiac might be a little overstated. I think McQueen went to the SFPD to learn about procedures and talk to cops, but I don't think he went there specifically for Tosky. I think Tosky was, an affable fellow who had the time to do it, and of course he had the cool idea of having the shoulder holster type deal. So I think McQueen took that from Tosky, but I don't know. Was Tosky the strong silent type? I'm not convinced of that.
no.
And also, to answer Ed's question, if you believe in the radians theory and you think about the bus bomb letter where he placed those 5 crosshairs around the clock face, 8, 9, 8, 9. What I noticed was thinking this might have been a precursor to the idea of radians and inches along the radians. You'll notice that the Stein murder was on the 8 o'clock position plus 17 degrees. It marries up perfectly with a clock face tilted to 17 degrees. And I checked out the Blue Rock Springs and Lake Herman Road, and they married up perfectly with a clock face to about 2 degrees out. They were 97 and 93% accurate to the positions on a clock tilted to 17 degrees. But Berryessa was quite a distance off. It was 77% accurate to this theory. So it throws into a little bit of doubt the theory about the clock face and the 5 crosshairs. 4 of them were identified, one which might have been Daniel Williams.
Yeah, there was a question from the chat asking us if we believe Zodiac lived in San Francisco.
No.
It's certainly possible. I mean, the main evidence is that that's where all his letters were sent from.
Yeah,
But you have to ask yourself whether it was a conscious decision for Zodiac to mail them all from the same place, a place.
and
where
maybe he
exactly-
worked in San Francisco. We don't know.
Or he
Yeah.
had lived there in the past.
Yeah, or like everyone else in the Bay Area, he would routinely drive there to do anything. It's like,
Yeah, visiting family, whatever.
yeah, or just going to a real city for one reason or another.
Yeah.
All of the victims had plans to go to San Francisco on their fateful evenings. It was just part of the lifestyle.
And,
But you
and
know,
he-
according to the FBI profiler, and this is not me who is saying that, it's coming from John Douglas, for example. If you assume that Lake Herman Road was his first killing, the profiler in the FBI tells that people who start to kill, when they start to kill, there is often where they live, because it's more, how can I say that? It's more,
They start close to home.
it's close to home and it's less dangerous. And after they take more, they have more
Risks.
confidence in their act, and they go more far. So
yeah.
I don't know, maybe it comes from Valero. if we follow the idea of the FBI. But
Well, Cantor and Larkin did a German study, and 60% of their murders were within a 6-mile radius where they lived to the murder. But also, you've got to remember that the first 2 crimes, if we assume he had a weekday job, Monday to Friday, he has some time constraints on the Friday, whereas the Saturday, he's got all day to travel further. So let's say he finished work at 5 o'clock on Friday and he comes home, he has something to eat. He's then going to go out and start searching for victims. On Saturday, he can leave at any time. I mean, the Berryessa crime was earlier, for starters. He's got ample time, and the whole day is his to go where he wants. But like you said, yeah, killers do tend to venture out as they become more confident. At the start, when you're uncertain about murder, you don't want to be on your own doorstep, but you don't want to be too far away if you're harboring incriminating evidence. You want to get home within a reasonable time, back to safety.
Mm-hmm.
But that confidence does grow over time.
Yeah, I circle around this this very issue. It's wonderful data about how killers start, and I think geographic profiling is a brilliant tool. On one hand, you say, okay, but that data shouldn't apply to killers who literally call the police and say, I killed someone on this spot, at this time. That would seem to require an entirely different data set. But the first crime that he did as Zodiac, he didn't call right away. He didn't send a letter. So maybe the geographic profiling does work for him. I don't know. I go round and round.
Do you mean at Lake Herman Road?
Yeah.
Well, we don't know. There wasn't a phone call because there was that crank call that may have been received.
That's true. Someone called the cops, and it sounds weird that someone would see a couple of kids lying on the road motionless and say, oh, they must have had a car accident, and their car made it into a parking spot.
And if that call came in, it would have come in just before, around the time Daniel Pitter rang in the details of the bodies being discovered at Lake Herman Road. We're talking about 12 minutes after the crime. So 12 minutes from Lake Herman Road to that payphone at Springs and Tuolumne is approximately 12 minutes. So we don't know the fact that a crank call or Zodiac rang from the same payphone twice.
Yeah. No. We also have to consider that this is a killer who 6 or 7 months later recalled the positioning of the bodies with regard to northeast, southwest coordinates. So maybe that does suggest that he knew he was going to come forward with the whole Zodiac thing at that point, and took those notes so that he would have something to put in a letter to prove involvement.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Okay, guys, I have to leave you because it's very late here in Holland. I want to thank you all for the great discussion.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you,
Ed. Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks.
Catch you again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye. The only four we resist to the time.
Just excuse me for 30 seconds. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, there is no problem. People was asking me about the drug bust on December 20th.
That's correct. Right.
If someone can talk about it, because I know that somebody was caught. I don't remember his name, but somebody was caught for about the drug bust. But if you want to talk about it, Drew or Adam, I don't know.
Is that the same pink house that we were talking about, Drew, where the
pink house,
Peggy Orr and
a fellow named Charles was arrested on December 20th, 1968, within, I believe, a half an hour of the shootings.
He
Yeah,
was arrested half an hour before the shootings or after?
Before.
before.
I don't. I said a half an hour because that's what I think they said in the documentary. They were on the. They
It's not
do.
maybe the exact time, but it's something around that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was near before. It was so near before that the cops were returning from that site when they passed the turnout. But I don't know. Do you recall what Peggy Yor said about it, Adam?
I just remember like being intrigued by the idea of Peggy Yor because she was very close to Lake Herman Road and sort of a witness, right?
Absolutely.
Her and her husband were coming to Lake Herman Road. He worked at the water treatment plant that was there.
Doing maintenance.
Yep. And they ran into these raccoon hunters that were also at the location. I remember thinking how weird it was that you had these raccoon hunters at Lake Herman Road who are armed, and then you have Peggy Yor and her husband coming to the same spot, and she also has a 38 in her car, which I don't know. I'm Canadian, so to me it's weird that all these people are driving around at night with guns. And they had some sort of a little dispute with the raccoon hunters, didn't they? Like, my gun's bigger than yours or something like that.
But it was maybe something was not unusual in America at the time to have a gun. I don't know. I live in Belgium. I don't know.
Yeah, everyone seems to have guns, and I don't think it was unusual, especially in sort of a rural area where hunting was going on.
Well, a 38's not for hunting, but not hunting raccoons.
Raccoons, but you
That's
know
true.
About that last week, I was talking about the theory that maybe the Zodiac was there to hunt the raccoons because he claimed he's a hunter.
That's right.
Well, it is something that you could.
Oh, excuse me, Drew. And he saw a possibility with Betty Lou and David to commit his crime, maybe his first crime, and he take advantage of that and kill them. But it was just an observation that I've made that maybe he was there before, so he was not tracking, he was not chasing Betty Lou and David. Maybe he was already there chasing
Who knows?
the raccoon. And I don't think it's something that people talk about, but I was wondering if it was something possible that the Zodiac was there to chasing the raccoon, like he talks about to be in a
if that's true that he was there for the raccoons, then that would make him very local because you can hunt raccoons just about anywhere.
Yeah.
But, and the other strange thing about Peggy Yor was that after Blue Rock Springs, she contacted the police and suggested that this same Charles, who lived in the pink house down Lake Herman Road, who was arrested that night for the drug bust, could be behind the murder at Blue Rock Springs. Is that right, Drew?
I'd have to read that passage again. I thought she revealed the name Bob. Now, whether there was someone else living, I do it too. Especially when you read these things and the names are redacted, and then you find out 6 years later what someone's name was.
Yeah, it's true. It's not always easy to.
But she inserted herself into the case again after Blue Rock Springs, and suggested a suspect who lived on Lake Herman Road, I believe.
Did she work at Mr. Ed's, or did I just invent that whole cloth?
You might be right. There's a lot of people working at Mr. Ed's.
Yeah, well, I've always said that
I think she did, but maybe in Napa or something like that.
I've always thought that Mr. Ed's could potentially be the missing link to entirely change the Zodiac narrative. We don't know that we have no evidence that David and Betty Lou or Darlene and Mike went to Mr. Ed's at any point. But if they did, then, gosh, if you were going to follow someone, just like the movie led us to believe, that would be the perfect spot for it.
What I found out from the newspapers was the approximate price of breath fresheners, which he might have bought for his first date with Betty Lou. And bearing in mind the price of these breath fresheners that were found on him and the amount of money he took out with him, that marries up with how much money he presumably had left.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Mm.
And you go into a restaurant, you're not necessarily going to be noticed.
No, of course not. No.
No.
Of course, we don't know how much money she had on her, do we?
We don't.
No.
I've always wondered that, but it doesn't seem like the killer got her wallet, because I believe her purse was in the back seat with her coat. Yeah.
And I'm also looking into this Chevrolet Impala again, because like I said, you look at the production color it was made in, it was ermine white, which under dark condition looks a brown color or a bronze color. So in theory, this white Chevrolet Impala could have been present at Blue Rock Springs. Now, since that car was vacant and there was no driver in it, and the person was obviously not in the turnout, if that was Zodiac's car, this may explain why he had a pencil flashlight on his gun, because maybe he went scouring around the area to just pick off victims around that turnout. We've got the Marshall Ranch, we've got the cottage, we've got Lake Herman, the lake. Who knows? I mean, it's a bit odd at that time of year to be scouring round, but he maybe went out earlier. We don't know how long he was going up and down that road before he found any suitable victims. So he may have had different intentions to collect his slaves originally.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, really. And do you think it's possible that it was a couple? Because if it was a couple, they are under the radar of the police.
Two attackers at Lake Herman Road, you mean?
Yeah, like a man and his woman.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about a man and a woman, although that would certainly explain 55 years of frustration. But I came to a conclusion a while ago that, and I've said this before, if we were just talking about Lake Herman Road, I would be most inclined to believe that there was more than one attacker.
Yeah.
And it is only because of the breadth of the Zodiac case, as we know it, that makes me assume that no, it was probably just one guy.
Do you believe the account of William Crowe about two Caucasian males chasing him down the road? Do you think that encounter was as sinister as he made out, or he read about the crime and embellished it?
I think he embellished it. I think you have to take the first report, despite Crowe later saying that he never said a blue Valiant. Maybe it wasn't a perfectly conducted interview, but if he was chased as recklessly as he said decades later, I'm certain that would have made the police report.
Can you remember if the white Chevrolet Impala was mentioned in the newspapers? And if so, how early?
I cannot remember. I don't know. I would be surprised if they went out of their way to identify the white Impala in the opening days. But
Yeah,
worth looking at. It would seem that I think the theory would be, though, that the police had their mind on a blue Valiant and maybe made an assumption or tried to feed him that information.
Yeah, and a blue Valiant looks similar to a Chevrolet Nova Mark II, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which corresponds partially to the blue car seen by the 3 women from Pacific Union College at Lake Berryessa.
Yeah. There's so many things that could possibly connect throughout the entire case and all the outlier cases. And, that's why we have to keep looking in every bush, because if you prove that he was in Gaviota Beach or Riverside, then that means he was also doing the Modesto attack, and if he was doing that, then he was probably in Lake Tahoe, and you go round and round.
Yeah, and a Chevrolet Nova. I think the track width married up with the ones measured behind Brian Hartnell's car as well.
Well, now there was an error in approach in the police reports with how that was measured.
Yeah, no, I've adjusted for that.
You've adjusted for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course you have.
Yeah, you're going to go on about the center of the tires, weren't you?
Yeah, it really changes the data.
And which is something which is really frustrating. It's the truth is there, but where?
You can't verify that the truth is there. It may not be. It may be just unknown in the universe.
Oh yeah, but that's possible. We have already said that maybe it was somebody who were never in the. Oh, you see what I mean? That's somebody who was never investigated, or somebody never heard about. Or maybe, but like we are talking about him like this, it's a possibility. So it could be the truth.
It is. I mean, a challenge question I would have is that if you believe that all of the Zodiac's victims were unknown to him, random targets, then what is the likelihood? What would be the impetus for the police to have anyone on their radar? What are the odds that Zodiac's name is in the police reports if he didn't know the victims? How would his name possibly come up, I wonder?
No idea.
Through locality to the payphone, or I don't know.
Was that a shot at Morph?
No, because I've written something more on that. I actually am more strongly inclined to believe he lived near that payphone now. I don't know if you read my latest article.
I haven't, not yet.
No, not
I
yet.
have. It's a real struggle and a mystery.
The article?
Yeah. What
The subject of the article.
What I noticed was in the August the 4th letter, he went out of his way to provide police with details about the Blue Rock Springs. You know, the boy was originally in the front seat. I shot him in the knee. Okay, he was correct. He got him in the leg. The window was already rolled down. He was going out of his way to provide details to police to prove he was there. And then you go on to the very virtual next sentence in that letter, and he describes a shabbily dressed Negro male about 40 to 45. And my thought was, where did he think the police spoke to this male? Because he talked about this man told the police my car was brown. Well, the logical inference is that he saw the police talk to the Negro male by the payphone, which had initially said the Negro male saw him. So my idea was the first responding officer to that payphone was after the call was traced, whether you believe that was 12:41 or whether you believe it was 12:47, 10 minutes later. So we're talking at 12:50 and beyond. There's a possibility Zodiac was still in the shadows of that payphone, giving the details of him seeing this guy talk to the police who responded to the payphone to protect it for fingerprint dusting, right? So I used to think he made up this Negro male and elaborated on the details to sell this fictitious character to the police and place his car at the payphone. But what if he actually was just providing more details to the police and therefore went into detail about this man talking to the policeman at the payphone? And it was just more proof, just like he'd done at the crime scene of Blue Rock Springs. This would place him at around the payphone 50 minutes literally after the crime, which would be far more safer if he was on foot than if he was in a vehicle hanging around parking his car nearby, which seems to me to bolster even more that. And why wouldn't the police admit that they spoke to a black male? Well, I think that's fairly obvious. They never admitted after Presidio Heights that they saw Zodiac. It would be too embarrassing if they'd admitted that the Zodiac was possibly in the area while they were still talking to a black Negro male. That would be embarrassing and something they wouldn't want to release into the newspapers. And if you think of the Presidio Heights police report, there was barely anything in that about anything. So it's not beyond possibility that they didn't mention this Negro male in the police reports, maybe to protect his anonymity, maybe to withhold it.
It would be a very strange detail to make up.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he said, I saw a black male, 40 to 45, shabbily dressed, talking to a policeman, the police would immediately know that was a lie. All they'd have to do is go to the responding officers to that payphone, and they'd say, no, we never spoke to anybody. So that bluff by the Zodiac would be immediately rubbished. So the fact he's provided it to them could suggest he actually was by that payphone 10 or more minutes beyond the time he finished the call with Nancy Slover. And if that's the case, that's more evidence that he could live near that payphone because he could be on foot.
But he would be aware of that too. He would be aware that he was telling the police that he was still in the area 10 minutes later.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I mean, if that's the case.
But don't forget, he said the black male who told the police my car was brown, so he was still using the ruse of the car. Now, the police could have interviewed him, the black male, and said, "Did you see a car next to the person in the payphone?" And even if he said no, well, that doesn't prove there wasn't a car. The black male saw him in a payphone, so Zodiac was still using the ruse of the car, but he went out of his way to provide a detailed description of the black male, which could have easily been rubbished by the police. So why provide it?
I'm sure that would be a very delightful detail for him to drop on the police to say, like, you idiots, I was right there watching you.
Yeah, the police can verify if there was a black male of that description. But what they couldn't verify and be certain of if the black male saw a vehicle associated with the guy in the payphone. So it doesn't hurt his argument to pretend, the black male you were talking to saw me in my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
He could just add that in as a ruse. That way, that allows him not to be suspicious of somebody who lived in that area because he's still in his vehicle and he can still go anywhere.
And they, after that last documentary that has he whose name is not to be mentioned in it, where there was the witness they interviewed for Lake Berryessa, I thought that was really interesting that the police had sort of held that information back, and that she had been, they say they brought her to one of the funeral to try and spot Zodiac, or am I? mixing up my cases.
No, that's true, but there's some reasons to sort of discredit Miss Jensen at Lake Berryessa.
Of course, well, every witness gets discredited sooner or later.
Well, it's I mean, the story that she brought forward 50 years later is that the so-called lurker who was watching the bathing suit girls for 45 minutes was like hiding behind trees, going from tree to tree as he was watching them. That's not in the police reports. If it is, it means he's Zodiac.
Yeah.
And she also said that as she drove away, that she saw the Carmen Gia parked at the spot, but that doesn't jive with the timeline. We know that Brian and Cecilia wouldn't arrive for another 45 minutes, and that was sort of verified because they saw someone else they knew, and they exchanged, they waved to this guy, and this guy. So I think she is mistaken.
And also, going back to the payphone, Graysmith said something interesting in his book. He said the phone rang back, and the Zodiac was still in the phone booth 1 minute when the phone rang back. Now, I don't know how quickly they rang that payphone back, the operators, but even if it was 10 seconds, once he's put that phone down after claiming 4 murders, you'd expect him to leave instantly. The only reason he should ever hang around in that payphone for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, up to a minute to be able to pull it off the hook and hear it ring and pull it off the hook, which is what Graysmith said, which is why I've interpreted that's how it was traced, because if it was off the hook and there's an open line, they can trace it. But either way, why is he in that payphone any longer than 1 or 2 seconds after he's hung up? The one reason to stay in that payphone is if there's a black male walking past that phone booth in the street, and the better option is keeping your head down, staying in the payphone, opening the door to put it into darkness, rather than walking back out onto the pavement and putting your face in view. That's one reason why he sat in that payphone for maybe an extended period beyond what was necessary, because there was a male black eyewitness walking past that payphone. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you
really.
know? I wonder if we could verify that it was an illuminated phone booth.
Well, that's what Graysmith said. He said when the door opens, it drops back into darkness. So all he has to do, if he sees the male walking toward, he must have seen the male walking towards him. He then, if he's hung up the phone at that point, he doesn't want to leave and go right in front of the guy walking towards him and past the payphone. So he stays in there for, let's say, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. I highly doubt that phone rang back within 1 second.
Right.
So if it took 10 seconds for it to ring back, he was still in the payphone for 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I find this tracing business back in 1969 very troubling research. But here's some speculation. One thing I learned not long ago from a great poster named Andrew O is that there was a Salvation Army or soup kitchen that was actually just like a block away from the payphone. So I sort of take Zodiac at his word with a lot of these seemingly bizarre claims. I think he was spotted by a fellow walking by, and he made an assumption that is where they got the information about the brown car. I don't think he saw Michael Mageau crawling out after him, who was actually the one who gave them the description of the brown car. I think all Zodiac knew was that there was an APB out for a brown automobile. And there was, you'd written in your article that it was said that it took 15 minutes to trace a call back in 1969. I'm guessing that is an approximation, and that sometimes it's a little sooner, I understood that they would basically have like a wall or a cabinet of levers that would be lit up in it, and so to an extent it would depend on how many levers were lit up at the time of the call, how easy it would be to isolate where the actual call was coming from. So my big speculation is that Zodiac calls the operator and says something about murder in it. Maybe just the same thing he said to Nancy Slover. I'd like to report a murder. And so because he says this, they have a longer phone call than one would typically have for an operator. She's trying to get him to say where he's calling from. He's not telling her. And she puts on the trace immediately and stays on the line when he talks to Nancy Slover. And so maybe that sort of appreciates that maybe the initial call was 12:30 or 12:35, and by the time he's done speaking with Nancy, they have enough for the trace. And this ring back business drives me crazy. I don't know. It seems like it would ring back right away, or it would ring back once the call was traced. But having Zodiac still at that phone booth 7 minutes later doesn't really make sense on any level. Like, I can appreciate him staying there for a moment as the guy passes by. I think that's sensible. But 7 minutes, that's crazy.
According to Robert Graysmith's book, Nancy Slover, after the Zodiac put down the phone, listened to the hum of the phone for a few seconds in sort of disbelief. I mean, if we interpret that, it's going to be at least 3 or 4 seconds before that phone rings back. Even after that length of time, I personally would put the phone down and leave that phone immediately. So
absolutely.
The only way I can see him remaining in there without doing it because there's an eyewitness nearby is if that phone rang back within 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
And then he yanks it from the receiver, leaves it dangling and walks away. That's how I initially thought it was traced, because the phone rang, he got annoyed because it drew attention to him. He pulls it off the hook and then he leaves the crime scene eventually. But it's off the hook now. And so there's an open line. And an open line means you can trace it. That's what I was trying to work out. But like you've said, you've put another spanner in the works by making the call probably slightly earlier, which makes sense as well.
Yeah, well, there's just some of this research is kind of tricky. Like, if someone said no, it takes a solid 15 minutes any way you slice it, then we have to throw some of our ideas out.
Yeah,
but it's hard to say. I'm getting most of my research from like Reddit posts. I don't know.
Well, that's why I'm concentrating just on the black male now being spotted by Zodiac, because let's be honest, he said the man who told police my car was brown. I doubt he overheard him in a police station or walk up to the newspapers. It had to be related to the earlier interaction by the payphone. And it makes sense, since an officer responded to that payphone to secure it, that the black male may still have been in the area. Like you said, he might be homeless. He might have been sitting nearby. He may have gone somewhere and come back past that payphone. Any people in that vicinity when that police officer arrived would have been questioned and asked, have you seen a white male in the area making a phone call from this payphone? And that's maybe why the Zodiac noticed a black male talking to the police. You'd expect it to be one continuous sequence from when the male was walking by and then later talking to police. So there would have only been about a 10, 15-minute gap between those two events.
Yeah, I think we know that the police did not speak to a black man who confirmed that there was a guy talking in the phone booth who had a brown car. If they had that, on July 5th or 6th, they probably don't put out an article asking for such a man to come forward. But if they had it in the first half of July, they would have two witnesses, Michael Majot and whoever saw him at the phone booth, both saying that he had a brown car. If they had that, they don't go on strike. No way. That is a hot case at that point. But that's not how they treated it. They basically they literally walked away from it in mid-July. They did the reports and then they went on strike for 2 weeks. Not 2 weeks, 5 days. Anyways,
Yeah,
I
but
would have stuck with it, and I don't think that they would have. I don't think that they go on strike if they had such compelling evidence as
A brown car?
Well, two people saying the car. He probably could have said.
But
more.
still, I mean,
Well, they
brown
knew-
car is
Oh, the
like saying
car.
like a white car. You know, it's
They knew it was a
Very-
brown car by interviewing Majot at the crime scene, because they put out a broadcast from the crime scene to be on the lookout for a brown car. At that
Okay.
point,
Well, maybe if Majot and the phone booth witness could only recognize that it was a brown car and had no other details to go on, then yeah, they don't have much.
yeah.
But
And
assuming these adults could actually, say, well, it looked like a Corvair, it looked like, this, that, and the other, I think they would have had a lot to go on and wouldn't have left. But the main question is that Zodiac seemingly confirms that he had a brown car. So either he had a brown car and he didn't live in town, or maybe he did live in town and that's why he let them believe falsely that he had a brown car
or he had a car at all.
or had a car at all.
And there's no guarantee the black male saw the car. We only have Zodiac's word on that. And if the black male did see Zodiac in the phone booth and it was submitted into darkness, his viewing of the Zodiac might have been pretty irrelevant to the police. He said, I probably didn't get a good look at him. I just saw a dark figure in the phone booth.
Yeah, why on earth would you be studying some man? He didn't know that someone was just shot. He certainly didn't know that was a killer.
What would you like to move on to, Jerome?
yeah, absolutely. Or if Adam want to add something, I
You
don't
got any
know.
ideas, Adam?
I'll be back shortly.
Okay. Got any ideas, Adam?
I'm curious. Like one of the things that always has stuck out to me about Zodiac is his. He seems to be very gifted with disinformation, like the busy work to keep law enforcement looking in the wrong places or going down rabbit holes instead of, sticking to the basic facts, like which he would do through his letters. What do you think about the possibility that skill was developed in previous work experience of the Zodiac, that maybe he was in government sort of military disinformation type job?
No, it's a good question and it's a good observation.
I suppose
Richard?
it's a difficult question.
Yeah, it is.
I would couple that with his letters, in the sense that how do we know the whole thing isn't misdirection and busy work?
I think we have to assume it is, one way or another.
Yeah.
What do we know for certain? What busy work was he talking about in terms of the Stein cab? Was he referring to the glove, or was that a previous passenger?
I think it probably was I think it was from an earlier night, honestly, because the information I recall is that although Paul Stein went to the airport before picking up Zodiac, I'm not sure that there was actually a passenger involved in that airport run. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was more about a package or something.
See,
You
if
know about
I,
that?
yeah, I was thinking though, if I was going to create some busy work in terms of the murder of Paul Stein, I would go to somewhere like the Fairmont Hotel. I would get one of their little cards with the advertising on, and I would leave it in the cab. Now, was something like that left in the cab that the police were keeping back? So if the real killer ever mentioned it, they could prove he was genuine. Is that the busy work they were keeping back, or is it something we've overlooked?
And if he did that, would he say in his letter that it was a fake clue?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
There's lots of things the Zodiac didn't do that I would have expected him to do. For example, the Dirty Harry film, I would have expected him to comment on that, but he didn't. There were many times I thought he would interact with the newspapers and police when he just didn't do anything.
Oh, he did, but it was not released at the time by the paper, so
Maybe.
on instruction of the police. I don't know. Maybe.
It's difficult to speculate on what they would hold back and what they wouldn't. And surely their attitudes changed throughout the decades as far as that went. When they released all of the police files and not all of them, when they released so many police files and FBI files in the late 90s, and a bestseller has already been written at this point, I would say that was certainly in an effort to utilize the public for any assistance that they could give. And I would think that they would be as helpful as possible at that point. Like if they had some sort of directive about what sort of demographic this guy might fall in, I don't see why they would hold that back. But I do think that they would hold back if they had something like a matchbook from the Fairmont Hotel or something like that. That is something to hold on to.
And if he was adept at disseminating false leads or busy work for the police, and he was, let's say, giving out false avenues for the police to run down, it's quite possible he worked for the newspapers who are used to selling rubbish to the public.
Yeah.
Or counterintelligence.
Yeah, or counterintelligence. Yeah.
Well, I think he had these skills, whether he was formally trained in it or not. And I think to an extent, you can sort of chalk it up to the same sort of knowledge that he exhibits with a bomb plan that more or less would have worked, or I don't know, his knowledge of what a radian is and how electronics work.
Yeah, could be a ruse again, though, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it is. I don't think a draftsman is going to show his work, show evidence of his profession.
I was saying today, I think the only thing I know for certain about the Zodiac Killer is that he had no empathy for the victims because he was capable of murder.
Mm-hmm.
He was a possible narcissist, but that doesn't mean he was. He could have given us the impression he was a narcissist by writing tons of letters to the newspapers. But there's a fair chance he was, and he was a psychopath, and that's about all I could probably say about him for certainty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was probably more insecure than arrogant. He really went out of his way to prove who he was. He didn't make assumptions that the San Francisco Police Department, who had written articles about him previously and published his ciphers, he didn't expect that they would know who he was. Yeah, I think he was a lot more self-conscious than is often talked about. Like he was very quick to anger.
And would you expect that if Lake Herman Road was his first murders, he clearly didn't jump straight into murder from being a normal person. I suspect he had low-level crime before that, of which may have appeared in the newspapers in the years before, like robbery, rape, larceny, anything. So what chance do you think that we've heard from Zodiac in the newspapers prior to Lake Herman Road?
Pretty good.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he was the Robert Hauser type to send editorials to the newspaper, letters bitching about one thing or another.
Mm-hmm.
But Richard, or anybody, do you have already saw something who looks like the Zodiac before the first letter?
Yeah, I did one piece ages ago. I can't remember much about it. I found somebody writing to a Sacramento newspaper who called himself the Concerned Conservative.
Interesting.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that story?
I don't.
Oh.
I'll search for it on your site afterwards.
There was
Is
something.
it on your site?
Yeah, he mentioned something about I don't want to give my name. It was a few days before the Concerned Citizen card. I'll find it.
Oh, so the Zodiac. This was within the Zodiac time frame.
I think it was on December the 4th.
Richard, do you see the screen?
Yeah, hang on, I'm going down looking for it. Oh, it's
Tell
not
me
in there. I don't know where I placed it. Yeah, that's no use. What would that category be that under, Druzer?
I don't need to go.
Oh, hang on. Forecast for Leo.
Well, there's a lot of phone calls and letters that may very well have been from him.
No, I don't know where I've stuck it. But it was the nearest thing I saw to something about the Zodiac Killer outside of letters we know he sent to the newspapers. But I don't know where I've placed it.
Gentlemen, I have to go and feed my children before it gets any later. It's
Yeah,
been a
absolutely.
pleasure.
It was great to have you by.
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
interesting
it was
chat.
good to have you.
Keep
Yeah,
up the
you
good
are
work,
welcome.
Jerome.
Nice to see
You are
you,
really
Adam.
welcome.
Nice to see you, Richard, or at least the icon you've chosen for yourself.
Yeah, I'll put
I
a
like
better
the-
one.
I like that your eyes are open this time. That's good.
Yeah, I can't because I've got a camera on top of the telly. I can't. It's angling down all the while. I can't between. So it's awkward. And the reason I've not gone on camera is because my speakers are right by the microphone. They're interfering.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to go and buy some headphones because I'm getting interference from my own
Oh,
speakers.
Mm.
So
Well,
I'll sort that out soon.
Yeah, but there is no problem with that.
I like it.
Thank you.
It keeps you mysterious, which is key.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, it's good. We are on the mysteries with Mr. Belgic, so
There we go.
Richard is mysterious. It's good. It's good. And Adam, thank you very much. You are welcome when you want.
I will be lurking in your computer at all times, Jerome. Just be ready. All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, thanks, man.
Thanks to
Cheerio.
you.
I should take off too. But,
Yeah, but before to go, I would like just to ask you about Yeah, Dennis Kaufman and Jack Torrance. Have you seen
Yeah,
Have you seen Ned with Aphrodite Jones?
I did.
Yeah.
And I had the same impression as Aphrodite Jones. I think he was very clumsily trying to dupe everyone into believing that his horrible stepfather was the Zodiac. I believe that he was a horrible guy, that's for sure. But
Oh yeah.
Druzer,
yeah,
before you go quickly, I found it. It was December the 4th. It was entitled The Hound of Libsimps, and it started, editor of the Bee, Sir, since the Bee does not give out the real name of letter writers, remember he used that in the Concerned Citizen card a few days later, who request anonymity, may I use this column to address the Harding Republicans? And later down there, he talks of trying times. And remember, I fitted that in the Z38 3 days later.
wow, yeah. Geez, that's interesting.
So it's under concern conservative, if you wanted. Remember when I said I'd found a possible solution to the it's in there. So yeah, I found that very interesting because of the concerns conservative, because of I don't want my name published, because of trying times, and because he said letter writer.
Yeah, that's really good. I will have a read of that.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I've ever found that struck me of Zodiac. Although the one downfall of it is it's signed concerned conservative, and then it's got the word Davis written underneath. So I don't know what the purpose of that is.
Yeah, all this talk about anonymity, and then he gives his last name.
Or gives a fake name.
Yeah.
Could be.
Anyway, I'll give you my thoughts next week.
Yeah, absolutely. See you on next Monday.
Druzer. Cheerio, buddy.
All right, take care.
Take care, Druzer.
Take care, my friend.
Well, I've got about another half an hour if you want, Jerome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm always okay to talk about everything with you, Richard. You know.
Have we got any questions in the comments that?
I'm going to ask people now if you have question that I have missed because the chat is running crazy. If you have some question, go ahead now. Like this, if you need to ask something to Richard or myself, go ahead. But
yeah, just
we are going to wait a little bit to people write their question if they have some question. I would like to thank everybody in the chat. Thank you very much to be here. Yes, Richard.
When can I chat with you? Love just chatting. Oh, does Soze mean on? Sorry, Soze. Does she mean on Discord?
On Discord, yeah.
Yeah. Hang on, what day is it today? Monday, isn't it? Well, yeah. If Soze wants to give me a day, the only day I can't do this week is Wednesday. So yeah, if Soze leaves a message in Discord saying when she would like a chat, I'll go and check it tomorrow.
Okay, so you have your answer. Next one, Netflix documentary. What do you think? Oh, the Sea Waters. Richard, your thought first.
Well, I don't believe the Sea Waters, but I know the new Netflix documentary is going to cover their accounts of Arthur Lee Allen.
Yeah,
that's what I'm gathering into this new show that's coming up. I don't think I won't have access to it from England anyway, but I probably won't watch it. But the only reason is because for me personally, I don't think Arthur Lee Allen's a Zodiac killer anyway, so it's not a subject that interests me anymore.
No, and for me, I see what the Seawater was telling on YouTube a few years ago, and I was talking with Connie Seawaters, the one of the. It was 3 people, the Seawaters, 2 brothers and 1 sister. One of the brother passed away uh, not so long time ago. So I talked to her, and it's really weird because she told me that she's really sure about what she said, but she don't think Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac. So it's something strange because if she think that she was there with the uh, a brother and at each crime, and she doesn't think that Arthur Lee Allen is the Zodiac. I don't understand.
Didn't they mention when they left? They were at the Dominguez and Edwards crime scene, and they spotted blood on his clothes when he got back in the vehicle.
Yeah. But
Connie
had rectified that in saying it was not on his clothes; it was just on his hand.
Oh, right, okay.
But
yeah,
maybe
I've just noticed a question earlier. There's Johnny Jepson says Zodiac did watch Yellow Submarine because he was on about blue meanies.
Oh yeah.
But what also happened was the trailer for Vanishing Point was released in January of 1971. The film Vanishing Point was released on March the 13th, 1971, the day that the Zodiac mailed his Los Angeles letter talking about blue meanies and using wording like "the police will never catch me," that was directly taken from the trailer of that film. So that's a good little connection to blue meanies and the Vanishing Point.
Oh yeah, but we know that Zodiac was taking all kind of different ID everywhere. The Mikado, there were nothing really new in what he was saying. He was taking a part of this and a part of that, and he was making his letter. So yeah, he's quoting this trailer of this movie. Yeah.
Well, all right.
Oh, so I have another question here. Do you think the case could have been solved years ago and buried due to some of authority involvement? No.
Do I think the case could have been solved? What? Oh, do you think the case could have been solved years ago and buried due to some authority involved? No.
No, me neither.
I think there were definitely mistakes made in the Zodiac case, and they had they certainly had opportunities to close this case. Certainly, obviously, putting aside cameras, the technology today with computers, I think, would have narrowed down this killer. Richard, are you wearing? What does that say? Richard, are you wearing pants? Question by Zap. Yeah. or trousers, as we call them. Yeah, so I don't know. Will you be watching the Netflix documentary, Jerome?
If it's available here in Belgium, yeah, I'm going to watch it, but I'm not waiting for anything. Anything new, I mean, because if they are focusing on Lee Allen, for me, Allen was not was is not and was not a Zodiac suspect. So,
Mm.
Richard,
And I
what
think
do you really think of Voight?
well, I think Gorilla Train knows that I don't like the guy. Simply because he's somebody in his 50s, and I would prefer it if he'd discuss the topics, merits of any arguments, rather than continuously just smearing people with names. I think the last 100 comments he's made about me is basically just called me a kook, a conspiracy theorist, an idiot. I think this is playground stuff, and this is the sort of thing that people do when they're in the school playground. You shouldn't be doing this when you're a grown adult of 50 years of age. So
No,
I'm not a great fan of Tom Voight. I
no,
don't know what's wrong with him.
no, me neither. I, I mean, I don't like the guy himself because first he stick on his position and he doesn't want to debate with anybody. So
No, I mean, he read my latest article. Now,
yeah,
I'm not saying I'm perfect. I make mistakes in articles, but rather than giving the reason why he thinks it's incorrect, all he does is smear you and say it's wrong, it's false, and you're an idiot, usually.
yeah,
So, you
he
know,
didn't argue. Yeah.
yeah. So, like,
Oh, Ross is saying that you you are wearing pattern stacks.
like I said, yeah, and no, I won't ever be discouraged by anything he says. I'm 62 now, Jerome. I find it disappointing when people keep smearing people. But it
I
doesn't
agree.
it doesn't upset me. I think when you get to my age, you should have a little bit thicker skin. So,
Oh, even me, I'm 45, and this kind of stuff doesn't
no.
touch me at all because everybody has the right to think like they think, and if they don't think like me, this is not a problem. But if they don't want to argue why I'm wrong, it's up to you. It's up to them. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
care.
none of us are perfect, and he's got
No,
errors. He's got errors on his website. I could name several that are wrong. Address those first and make sure you're 100% correct before you start smearing other people and saying they're kooks.
absolutely. But I think his ego is talking for him because he was one of the first to create a website. So I think he see himself like the first one. The first. But yeah, I know it's stupid. When is the next panel? Monday. Next Monday. Every Monday.
Is anybody else from the Discord going to be invited on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Anyone who want to come to talk about the case or the case, they are really welcome.
When's Soze coming on?
So he can come can came on the show when she wants. Happen to Helen from this. No, I don't know. Even from Texas was the guy who had called Gareth Penn, if I'm right. I don't remember. I remember somebody calling Gareth Penn and tell him that he thinking he was the Zodiac, and Gareth Penn, he don't say no. It was a little bit weird, but I don't remember if it was Evan from Texas. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Julio says, with all these so-called experts around, you'd think this would already be solved. Well, I've never ever claimed I will solve the case. All I try and do is explain how the crimes and the communications I try to give more insight into the crimes and communications to make what we view about the case more accurate. But I've never ever claimed I can solve the case.
No.
That can only really be done with DNA and fingerprints, or possibly finding the wallet of Paul Stein, the driving license, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, new material.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely you're going to solve the case over the internet. That's very rarely done. Very occasionally, when people identify victims, missing victims' skulls, and locate them through searching these databases. But other than that, I don't think the case will ever be solved. That I'm being realistic. And no matter how much I delve into it, I still need access to all the information the police has got, because they've got all the hardware, the computers. They can search databases and records. I would like to have found out of periods of silence of the Zodiac Killer, when people were jailed and when they were released, but I just simply can't find that information online. So
yeah, it's really difficult because the prison system has its own way to work, and to have this kind of information, it's really hard to have. Really hard.
And find all the information of the people living around that payphone, access to their driving licenses, their passports, their photographs. This would all be helpful.
Yeah.
If you believe the killer lived around that payphone, but I've got no access to any of this. So you can only go so far, and then you have to stop.
Yeah, that's true. That's the stuff who I'm really frustrated, because in some case it's really more easy to have access to files, and in some other cases it's almost impossible to have access to these files. So
what I will ask Soze or anybody else in the chat or on Discord, if they can find out anybody connected to the Zodiac case, any surviving victims, any police, any newspaper editors who have published newspaper articles about the Zodiac Killer, and anybody connected to the Zodiac case whatsoever who was living in Redlands near San Bernardino in July 1971, I would be happy to hear from them. I know Brian Hartnell moved to Redlands, or had a business in Redlands, but I don't know what date he moved there. And I know Kathleen Johns lived about 4 or 5 miles from Redlands, but at 847 West Campus Way. But she moved from that address before July 1971. So if anybody can help me with locating somebody relevant to the case who lived in Redlands in July 71, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, it will be great to know that. Yeah, and you have made a good point early, talking about the Zodiac, the payphone, and the ruse he was trying to use with the car, and maybe he had no car, and that's maybe why he mentioned the car. It was maybe a ruse. Yeah, it's a really good point, Richard. Really good point.
Yeah, I only thought of it because everything in that August the 4th letter was designed about proving to police. So why mention somebody that the police never spoke to could never identify? It would put into doubt everything he said previously in that letter. So there's a very good chance that the Zodiac Killer was by that payphone 10 minutes or more after the discussion with Nancy Slover. So
I do agree. Yeah.
I think that is really interesting. And like I said, I think the best technique to locate or find the identity of the Zodiac Killer is to narrow down where he lived first and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think Mike Morford's on the right lines. I don't think it's Mac, but I certainly, I do agree with Mike's way of thinking.
About what? Tell me.
About the fact the killer drove home, ditched his car, ditched his weapon. He possibly had blood on him, so he wanted to remove his clothing because remember he leant into that Corvair because there was bullet casings on the back floorboard. So he may have transferred blood to his shirt. So I think it would have been wise to go home, remove the smoking gun, the clothes, his vehicle, and walk to the payphone to make that phone call, where it's far safer because he's got no incriminating evidence on him. And also we have to explain the 40 minutes for a 10-minute journey, because he should have made that phone call at 12:10 in theory. So where was he for at least another half an hour? And I think he probably went. But obviously, if you've got a suspect who didn't live near that payphone, the only person we know of who lived near that payphone was Arthur Lee Allen, surprisingly. So I don't think it's him and I don't think it's Matt, but I think that's a good starting point, identifying other people other than those two individuals who are good candidates. Like I said, wouldn't it be great if you could get all the people who lived within, say, a half-mile radius of that payphone and get access to their passports, their driving licenses? At least you'd get an impression of what car they were driving. That's what I'd have done. That's what I'd have done first. Knocked on every door and got all that information. But how far they put the dragnet out around that payphone, I don't know.
No, me neither. But it is an excellent point. Excellent, really. And people in the chat say, why I do not invade the sea waters or Graysmith or yes, it's I could I could do that. It doesn't bother me if they want to come and talk about the theory. There is no problem. Everybody who wants to come here to talk about his theory is really welcome. I'm only asked to be polite and nice with each other. That's the only thing I'm asking. So that's why I think we will never have Tom O'Run here on this channel, because the guy listen him to talk. So
and Archangel Michael, I do have contact with Jibber Jabber. Yes. He posts on my site, and he's posted on my site today. So if you want, if Archangel Michael wants to ask Jibber Jabber anything, all he has to do is go on to my latest article, and he can leave a message for Jibber Jabber there.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be nice to get him on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's welcome. Really. I am not joking. Everybody's welcome. Just stay polite and everything will be okay. And go on zodiaccipher.com for that.
Yeah, I have regular emails off him and he's always very polite. So I know for a fact that he's not going to create any controversy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But I think it's good to have this round table where we talk about a subject, even if we are not agree on the subject. It doesn't matter, because we accept we already have accept the idea that we can be wrong about our theory. So
Yeah, if you believe, I mean, there are certain things in the Zodiac case you can almost say is 100% true. But if you get to the point where you think you know everything in the Zodiac case, you definitely stop learning. And
Absolutely.
like I said, I've just switched around my opinion. I used to think the black Negro male that was identified by Zodiac was a complete fictional character. I don't believe that now. And that's taken me 12 years to change my opinion on that. Like it took me about 10 years to change my opinion about the confession letter. So there's nothing wrong in admitting that you've changed your opinion.
No, nothing wrong. But like you said, people like Tom Voigt, we will never do that.
So, is there anything else there?
Yeah.
Richard, give us 10 reasons why Geik isn't Zodiac. Joke.
Richard Gaikowski. Yeah.
I think with suspects, it's more like the burden of proof that doesn't reach a certain standard for me, rather than me trying to disprove the suspect. I think the interesting find in the cipher that Tom Voigt points out, the Geik, the Aus, and the key, I think that's quite a very interesting find. It's a bit like Drew Beeson's Paradise spelt with a C. Yeah. That's an interesting find. There's no doubt that certain suspects have interesting things to connect them to the Zodiac case. I just think it's how far you take it. You know, I think it applies to most people. As you start running out of ideas, you get more and more desperate, and that harms the case. I would stick to the really solid things that you think may link your suspect, and not keep digging further that weakens your case. But yeah, I don't want to disprove anybody's suspect. You know, you know, that's not my intention. I just move on. I've looked at all the suspects. I don't buy any of them, so I've moved on. But I don't want to detract other people and start raining on other people's parade. You know,
no, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. It doesn't go anywhere. So, no, you're right. And you in this kind of case, you need to stay open-minded, because, like you said, if you think that you know everything, that means that you know anything, because you learn all the time.
I mean, the identification of suspects or chasing suspects is usually the thing that sells. If you look at the Most Dangerous Game, Gary Stewart, you look at all the things that have made the main news, Fox News, etc. Most of this is to do with people's suspects. You're not going to get anything that I write appearing on Fox News. Richard identifies that he thinks a man was seen around the payphone. I mean, that's just not interesting. No. I understand the interest and the pursuit of suspects, because that's the thing that tends to sell.
Yeah, like the Casebreaker had done, and it was all over the place. Oh yeah, we have found the identity of the Zodiac Killer. His name was Gary Francis Post. I have free proof. No.
When's Ross getting us on to discuss?
Ross will make his comeback in late October.
No, he said he wanted to interview me, Druzer, and Adam about the Donna Lass case on Planet X Filmworks. So while he's here, I wanted to know when he wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because that's an interesting subject, that is.
Yeah.
Now.
Absolutely. Ross, when you want to do that?
Yeah, I might have another look at that. That's really interesting. Joseph Stephen Holt. But that would close another chapter in the Zodiac case, wouldn't it? if he could be identified as her killer. I don't know what chance we've got of achieving that now he's dead, but I think definitely he's a very strong candidate for that case now.
Yeah, Ross will send you an email.
Oh, right. Okay. Certainly. Is there anything you'd like to cover before I go, Jerome?
We can continue next week like this.
Who have we got planned for next week? Roughly the same, or?
We will see. We will see with people on Discord and with you, with Druzer, with Ned, and we will see what are the topic who interesting people.
See, I'm quite prepared to drop out if you want to get different people on from time to time, because obviously you don't want to get 8 or 10 people on at once because you're not going to get round to people, are you? So
yeah,
you want to keep it around 5 or 6 at the most, don't you?
But I can have 10 people because I have a membership on StreamYard, so I can have 10 people, but 10 people in the same times.
It's difficult because some people aren't going to get a chance to say hardly anything, are they? So
yeah, because people want to react and they don't know exactly when can they do that. So it's often the case that people talk over other people, and it's not great. But I was not thinking about a subject in particular, but no, I don't know, Richard. I don't know.
I'll have to.
People have asked me if you and the other, but like you are the last one, I'm going to ask you if you have already made any connection between the family of the victims. If they're
are you on about through the military angle that Thomas Horan suggesting?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Thomas Horan has made connections between the Zodiac victims' families, hasn't he? I think through the military. That's his angle at the moment.
I don't know.
Haven't you seen that?
No.
Well, go on to his site. He discusses it. I don't think there's any connection between the families in terms of the Zodiac Killer. No, I think that's the truth a little bit. But yeah, I know Thomas is investigating that sort of stuff now, but it's not something I would take too seriously.
No, because it will be really something odd that the family were related in the past and something like that, and somebody was taking a kind of revenge, or their son or their daughter. No,
I think these were simply random murders. He was probably cruising up and down Lake Herman Road between Blue Rock Springs and the bottom of Lake Herman Road looking for victims. And like I've said before, he could easily have found somebody at Blue Rock Springs on December the 20th, and we could have had the first crime there. I think it was more opportunism through scouring the area. Obviously, he selected an area on the outskirts of town that he could commit his first crime, probably in seclusion. And the ideal place was hovering back and forward between Blue Rock Springs and Lake Herman Road. So I don't think it's any surprise that the first murders were in those locations. But obviously then he had to move away. He couldn't keep committing crimes in the same area over and over again.
No, and that's something I'm really interested in. It's to know if it was his first crime or not, because if it was his first crime, like I've said before, according to the FBI, it must be somebody who live in the same area. and after he take confidence on him, and he can go to another place more far from his home, but this is something we don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a fair chance if you look at the distances from the payphone anyway to Blue Rock Springs and Lake Herman Road, you would expect him to be traveling towards home and passing a payphone somewhere in the vicinity on his route home. So I would expect the distances beyond that payphone to be no more than a couple of miles maximum, because then the crimes would be about 6 miles from his home. He needs to leave some sort of buffer zone. But like I said before, he doesn't want to commit his first crime in San Francisco.
No.
Because then he's got a 40-odd mile trek back home. And I don't think you do that in your first crime. You're a little bit more cautious.
I think so, yeah.
I'll tell you what we could discuss next week. A case that I find really interesting is the abduction and murder of Leona Roberts on December the 10th, 1969. There's some fascinating details and a potential Zodiac phone call and letters connected to that crime. So
Wow.
I don't know if you want to have a look at that in the meantime, but Leona Roberts is a very interesting case. I don't, again, think it's the Zodiac Killer, but there's a fascinating connection between the letters and the phone call, which is very rare because the Zodiac didn't claim many victims back then. Certainly, if he wrote the letters in connection to the disappearance of this woman, because she hadn't been found murdered immediately. She wasn't found dead till December the 28th. And one of his letters was a forecast for Leo. So a forecast for Leo suggests something that was still ongoing again, not an immediate murder. And on January the 4th, even though this letter wasn't published in the newspapers, connected to the Zodiac, maybe, there was a phone call on January the 4th from somebody claiming to be the Zodiac Killer. So either two independent people sent a letter on the day she was abducted and a letter with forecast for Leo on it, a horoscope page, and then a different person made a phone call connecting himself to this crime, independent of each other, would take some believing. So if it's the same person, this is one of the very rare instances where we've got a phone call and a letter referencing one victim who isn't a canonical Zodiac victim. So that's an interesting case.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
We could cover that a little bit next week.
Yeah.
Because I know Druzer knows about it.
Yeah. And if you can send me some links like this, I can.
Yes, I'll send you the 3 main articles and you can see what I mean. I'll send that to you. I'll send that to you tomorrow, Jerome.
Yeah. Take your time.
Absolutely.
There is no rush.
I'm going to shoot now. And can I thank you for having me on again, Jerome, and thank everybody in comments for turning up.
And thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure, like always, to have your knowledge and everything. You know that here you are home and you come back when you want. And I hope to see you next week.
And it's great to see your channel starting to rise.
Yeah. It's really excellent, and I really appreciate the people. And it's.
I didn't check it today. Is it closing in on 1,500 now?
I think so. I don't have check, but yeah, it could be
doing well. Yeah. Okay then, Jerome. I will bid you good night or good morning.
Yeah. Good night.
I'll catch you again next week, hopefully.
Okay.
All the best then.
All the best, Richard. See you
Bye,
soon.
Jerome. See you
Bye,
soon.
Richard. And I'm alone. Oh my gosh. I'm alone. Yep. It was the episode 7 of the Zodiac Killer Mysteries. I would like to thanks again Sharon for all she has made. She has made the all the new graphics, the intro, the logo that you have here. The logo here. No, yeah. Here. Yeah. It's not easy. Yeah, the logo, the everything. I would like to thank Megan to become a new member, Garia Man, and Sharon by with me. Thank you. By speaker. The show. I hope you have enjoyed the panel and the discussion. Oh, you want that I play something? Oh, Charlie, thank you very much. Thank you. You that's something you don't have to do. I already told you, but thank you very much. Yeah, I can sing something if you want. Yeah, I can try. I can try it. Yeah. I don't know if the synth will be great. I don't know, and I don't know what to sing. So we will see. But first, I need. No one knows what it's like to be the bad man. Man. Well, some true, but my dream, he has something, and my conscience in the wind. Oh, that's Howard, holy, only dancer, it's only me. I don't know. I don't know the lyrics, and I don't have the lyrics in front of me. So I was singing gibberish, and I love to singing gibberish. Yeah, I will make a dab. Hey Joe, what about you've got in your hands? Hey Joe, what you do with this gun in your hands? I'm going to shoot my lady. Because kill me with another man. Hey Joe, where the man go? Yeah. it was me, the wee bumpot, Mr. B, Mr. Jerome. So, like I told you, every Monday it's Zodiac Monday. Uh, yeah, on next subject, each show going to talk about a different subject. It's the name of the show is here. No, the place of the show is here on the channel, but the name of the show is Let's Talk with Ned, and we will see what the subject will be. But you can propose some stuff, and I'm going to watch your comments in the description below. Right here, just right here. So go ahead. Yeah. So to resume, um, it was an excellent show, an excellent panel, because I have a great panel and I have a great audience. It's amazing. Like Richard saying, he was saying that the channel and it's true. The channel is growing up. I never expected. It's something which is great because you are great. And oh yeah, I know I froze. Yeah, I know it's my connection. Connection here is not good because the weather. Yeah, a lot of wind. That's why I don't have a good connection today, sadly. But I hope you have enjoyed the show, and I'm going to do an open mic, I think, during the week, maybe on Wednesday, an open mic to talking about the case, the Zodiac case with other people coming from Facebook, Discord, Twitter, and yeah, I'm going to also to do a big reunion with everybody. Uh, ah, I'm going to do a big reunion with the whole team of Making a Murderer to talking about the Stephen Harry case, Brendan Dassey case, Teresa Halbach case. So for me, I don't have changed my mind. For me, Stephen and Brendan are innocent, and which is sad is that Stephen had a great lawyer, Kathleen Zellner. Thank you, Wetty Spaghetti. Thank you very much. You don't have to do that, but thank you very much. Yeah, like I was saying, Steve has a great lawyer with him, but with all the respect I have for her, I think she's wrong. I think that pointing Bobby like this is not the good angle. But I could be wrong, but in my opinion, if I was her, I was more looking and try to talking to Ryan Hilligas and Scott Blodorm and Mike Halbach, because those three guys know something. I'm sure they know something about Teresa's death. And that's something I cannot prove because don't say their name. So I say, yeah, absolutely. If you want to stay anonymous because you're afraid for your life, okay, it's something I could understand. There is no problem with that. So, and some different people that told me the same story. So I'm just to give you what they just tell you what they told me. They told me that on October 31st, 2005, for Halloween, there was a party at Teresa's home, but not made by Teresa, made by Scott Brodorm. And Michael Bach was there with Ryan Hidegas and two friends of Scott Brodorm. And apparently, Teresa is come home one moment. She was at her parents' home. She come at her home, and something went wrong. I don't know what it was. Maybe she was completely pissed off against Scott. I don't know. I I don't have details about that, but um, and this is something that's different people who don't know each other because I have made my research and I'm not sure, but I think they don't know each other. Told me the same story because the two friends of Scott Brodorm later have expressed some remorse about that, and they have talked to people, and people knew that it was BS, the story with Stephen Harry, but what to do? Going in court and say, "Hey, no, I know who is the killer." No, first you cannot do that. So yeah, Jarl Van Hike on the show. yeah, yeah, he's welcome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, on my understanding, he is living in Belgium, but I think is the Flemish way, well, Flemish part, which in is in the north of the country. So yeah, y'all can contact me anytime because I've tried to find him on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere I can, but nothing. So Jarl Van Hike, Jarl, excuse me, Jarl. If you are interested to doing a video about what you have found and how was your way to work with David Oranchak and uh, the other guy, Sam yeah, yeah, you are interesting at 100% that it's accurate. The Z340 was cracked. Yeah, and the FBI is agree with the solution that David Oranchak had present to them, but he stay open-minded and he know that it could be wrong and that somebody could came up and with a new solution better than his solution. So yeah, it doesn't mean because it was being cracked in 2020 and the first cipher was cracked really early in 1969 by Don and Betty Harden. It doesn't mean that it was it was true. Maybe there is another solution to those cipher. I have no idea. I have worked a lot on those cipher, and I'm not a cipher guy. I just try to and read about it's possible. Those guys, like the case breaker, I don't know what to say about them because they call themselves experts. They are 40 and they are wrong. Yeah, I'm freezing again, I know. And yeah, they are wrong. So I don't know. I don't know. They are completely wrong, and they are supposedly to be experts, but they are wrong. It's proven. It's proven that the case breaker was wrong. So thanks, Doc. Lyra. Thanks. Dark Side of the Moon. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Head. Thank you, Archangel. Thank you, Haltuk. Thank you, my Wii. Thank you very much. Thank you to Ross to be part of this incredible panel. And don't be worried, we will see you soon. And during the time, take care of yourself, take care of your loved one, take care of everybody who means something for you. And yeah, take care of you. And like I say all the time, stay true, stay yourself. This is the better way to be. This is the better way to be. Stay yourself. Don't change. Even if people doesn't like you because you are yourself, it doesn't care. You are yourself. So stay yourself. And if you haven't done so already, just subscribe. Like the Jews, like the Jew was saying. Yeah, Richard, every cozy. I miss him. So, see you soon. Goodbye. Take care. Stay yourself.